Going live, and we're live. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Hello, folks out there on a wee bit early. Excuse me. Hello, everybody out there in YouTube land. Popping on just a wee bit early just to make sure everything's okay, as always. And we'll just wait up to 9 o'clock before we get going with our Dune Messiah book club. So if anybody's out there, say hello. It's always nice to hear from you. And again, just folks, I suppose some of you have got a little bit of correspondence from you that I haven't got around to answering, and apologies, I've been swamped this week. And I'm off for a bit of dental surgery again tomorrow, which is hopefully the last of these things, because it's been going on for quite some time now. So yeah, there we go. There's 9 o'clock, folks. Hello there. I'm Doc Sloan. Thanks very much for joining me on my science fiction station, the Doghouse. And welcome to our Dune Messiah book club. And we're on chapter 18 tonight, which is a fast little chapter, to be honest with you. Excuse me, pardon me. And just as I suppose as the pace within the story picks up, so does Frank's writing in this chapter. Tonight is a night where I think we're starting to get. I suppose we had the arrival of Bijaz in the story last week. And in this chapter, we're going to see Paul Atreides being blinded. So as much as Bijaz speaks in riddles, and Paul ends up being blind, what we essentially Dune Messiah and Herbert quite a lot. We see quite a few people talking about but something that we always point out is actually the real kind of mythology work that heavily influenced him was Lord Raglan's book on the hero and its ritualistic steps that the hero goes through, which Joseph Campbell's work is a bit of a, I suppose as you can see a descent towards it, if you like. So tonight, as we get through the chapter, we're going to have a look at our good friend Apollodorus, and I've got the correct volume of my Robert Graves Greek myths, found them. We've also got a little bit of Sophocles for you tonight, just to give you a little bit of a sense of the real myth of Atreides. The real myth of Oedipus, actually. And there's Chaya Rivka saying, Shalom all, Shalom Chaya. How you doing? Hope you're keeping well. Thanks very much for joining us, as always. It's good to see you here. So let me just, as a bit of a crazy day, as always. And in fact, I only woke up about an hour ago. I had to go to sleep. I was so knackered. And then a few minutes ago, I shoved a burger in my mouth, basically went and brushed my teeth, sat down, got some lemonade, made a rollie, and we're ready to go. But there you go. It's been a bit of a chaotic day. And our doggies are barking at something. They're not too bad, I suppose. So there we go. Let me just get organized here, because I've got quite a few books around me today. And there was something actually I was looking into, and I'm not too sure about, which I'm going to have to ask everybody basically in regards of their Dune books, which was we were having a bit of a chat last week, and I can't remember who it was, but somebody mentioned J radiation in relation to the stone burner, and I ended up trying to look this up, find it in the books, and could not find it at all. There's Don Ragnar. Hi, Don, saying, just saw Dune 2, Timothy Charmless and Zen Diesel. Oh, very good. Are completely miscast as Paul and Chani. I'm fully a Dune books only maximalist after seeing both films. Yeah, Don, I'm pretty disgusted at the whole thing, to be honest with you, but I don't know how to put it. Well, I do actually know how to put it. I've called it character assassination, and we could even call it, I suppose, it's Hollywood's de facto rape of Frank Herbert's masterpiece and turned it into a piece of the cinematic equivalent of Pulp Fiction, if you like. But I'm going to do something when I get a bit of time on it, Don. But I'm seriously unimpressed. It's a very pretty film, and I sort of said my favorite bit in it is just something that reminded me of Buck Rogers, the old serial. But it's an extremely badly written film. There's problems with continuity in it. The characters are almost unrecognizable. If they've got the names, but hardly any of the characters are who they are. And there's definitely a bit of an agenda going on with something. But I don't know. I find it pretty naff, to be honest with you. A really really well polished turd is what I would call Dune 1 and 2. And it makes me appreciate David Lynch's Dune an awful lot more, and the miniseries, Frank Herbert's Dune and Children of Dune, which kind of covered the whole Dune trilogy. And I think did it very well. It's a bit sad that I was kind of hoping that the two Dune films would be a kind of high value production of something very similar to Frank Herbert's Dune and Children of Dune, the miniseries, which had their problems, but I think, and especially with David Lynch, I think they really did have the heart and soul of the stories correct, if you see what I mean. And there's nothing iconic, I think, about Denis Villeneuve's Dune. I think it's an absolute travesty, to be honest with you. But I'm looking forward to getting a bit of time to putting my thoughts together on it, Don. And I'm hoping to actually do a commentary on the whole thing at some point. I'm going to sit and watch it with the volume down, and record my observations and criticisms and thoughts about the film, But not impressed at all. There's Carlos Crucelia saying, "Hey Doc, hey everyone," and maybe so bad we should invoke Canley against this house. Very good. Yes, indeed. It is. It's also it's interesting to see how much people who are unaware of it, I suppose, that how much people love the film in some senses, but I think those people are not fans of the Dune book. Well, there certainly are fans of the novels who have been, quite delighted and I don't know how to put it, jumping up and down with joy about it. But I think it's an absolute travesty. I really do. Don Ragnar says, "Look forward to your commentary, Dog, and all the other Dune fan channels on YouTube have sold their soul to these films." Well, we'll not be doing that here. I did make an effort. I wasn't very well when I went to see the first one, and the cinema that I saw in was appalling. And the film just looked like somebody had spilled curry over the screen or something, and we couldn't see things. So the cinematic experience that's not IMAX was really, really poor. Different cinema for part 2 this time. It was a much better experience, I think, better cinema, but no IMAX, and I don't think it would actually help in any sense or shape or form. But the first film I found really jarring, orally, if you like. And I suppose at the end of the day, I really don't recognize the characters. I think they're almost, I don't know how to put it, but they're right from the get go. Duke Leto's not Duke Leto, but Chani isn't in the film as far as I'm concerned. They should just call the character Zendaya, or Huffy Itger or something like that. But it's very, very far from the real Chani. I think is an appalling. And Chani does things in the film that probably get her killed by the rest of the Fremen, and the way they've treated the Fremen. The guild's pretty much absent. The Mentats. The Baron, as we've discussed, is a heterosexual fat bloke now, and that's all he is. It's just a heterosexual fat bloke. I found him completely not menacing. I had a bit of a problem with the knife violence in it, that I think it's not really suitable for a 12 certificate. And there's even just real problems with continuity of character, continuity of script. Christopher Walken misses the ring. And I think it's meant to be filmed from an angle that it looks like he kisses it, but he doesn't. And going around stabbing people in the throat quite a lot without any blood, I think is not a particularly good thing for a 12 certificate film, to be honest with you. So the attempt, it's Dune defanged, it's Dune dumbed down, it's I don't know what it is. It's a woke kind of Dune, I suppose. But yeah, I think I'll hopefully, what I said, I'm very busy at the minute with students as we're heading towards exam time here. And I've kind of ended up picking up a lot of students, and because I've kind of had to put Fridays aside because I've been getting a lot of dental surgery done. It's just my time to get it. This stuff has not been quite so good, and apart from that, I'm barely managing to get the book club done. But we're doing okay, So I'm looking forward to having a proper go at it, to be honest with you. rather than just sitting here and having a wee bit of a moan about it myself. But yeah, I was not happy with how Hollywood has dealt with this book at all. Not one bit, to be honest with you. Let's see. Don saying, look, oh yeah, I read that bit. The only person I felt was cast well but underused was Charlotte Rampling as the Reverend Mother. Yeah, Charlotte Rampling's a pretty good actress, to be honest with you. And she's been in a few pretty good things, but she has a phenomenal eyes. If you've ever seen Charlotte Rampling's eyes, which would kind of match some of the descriptions of the Reverend Mother Gaius Helen Mohiam, but to cover her up with the veil like that, etc. I suppose it's more of, isn't Mohiam's hair is more like that than I suppose, but it hides a number of characters, I think, and yeah, I think she was misused quite. Again, it's the way the characters have been written, I think, but I think she wasn't too bad, but then you go into part 2 and you go, well, who the hell is this? Once again, it's just what's going on. Colors M Diesel says, Don, did they purposely make Fade Routher look like Andrew Tate to send a message? Who knows? I thought the actor that played Fade was quite good, but again, he should have been in Fade should be in the beginning, really, with that little triumvirate of Fade, Piter, and the Baron. I always sort of think of the Baron and Piter as a kind of demented odd couple, if you know what I mean. And their interactions are absolutely fantastic. And you really do get a sense of that with Brad Dourif, in the Brad Dourif in the David Lynch film, the way they go back and forth a bit at each other, I think. But yeah, it's again, sort of, we talk about Dune being a bit of a how do we put it, a psychotic family novel, as well as a buildings room and all that stuff. And I kind of missed that level of psychotic behavior, if you like. Screaming and being very angry isn't quite the same thing, if you like. Raban, but to give Raban so much time detracted from Fade, I suppose. But there we go. Hello, Doc, says Cynthia. I mentioned J radiation last week. The book term is slightly different. In chapter 19, Corbell will mention J ray to blind those too near to. I was doing a wee search throughout the books, and I was wondering, I can't find this, and I ended up just doing a search with it. And then I even went to the Dune Encyclopedia to have a nosy at. Thank you very much as again, I'm doing these notes as we go, but I just did a wee quick search and I used the word radiation, so that's why I didn't find it actually. J rays. Aha. I will make a wee note of that so I can check up on it for next time. Thank you very much, Cynthia, and hello, how are you? And thanks very much for joining us, as always. Aye, there we go. J rays. So as I said, folks, this is a pretty small chapter, and we'll probably tear through it quite quickly. There's not too much in it, but it's really the sense of the action building up and speeding along. We got that sense of urgency from Bijaz, and as trying, let's get the heck out of here kind of thing last time. And I suppose there's a little thing to point out in this chapter if you've had a wee look at the wordings of my sort of wee title card stuff, if you like. But as I said, we'll get the chapter done tonight, and then what I've got for you is, which I hope it's just for anybody who maybe isn't familiar with this stuff, is I've bookmarked this stuff, so I have it pretty handy. Is I'm going to read you a little bit from Apollodorus from Robert Graves, and I've also got a couple of I think a good wee section from Oedipus Tyrannus, Oedipus Rex, if you like, by Sophocles. So we can bring up the Oedipus myth and have a wee quick natter about it at the end of the program. Pardon me. So thank you very much, folks. But yeah, I look forward to getting that done at some point, Don. I'd love to get a bit of time and tear into this stuff properly, I think. But and as a side, it's I suppose movie criticism isn't kind of, well, I know how to criticize anything really, so in that sense, let me just grab Dune. Where are you? Dune Messiah. Here, there we go. Get my little put that there and get my paperweights. And just to make sure I'm on the right track with this stuff. But yeah, we're getting there, aren't we? We're tearing through. Chapter 18 gives us 6 chapters to go. And next week's chapter is going to be pretty. It's a lengthy one, isn't it? It's lots of work for me to do. And hopefully, as usual, we'll try and run with the there we go, with that one there. Right, with the program on Thursdays at 9 p.m. Fingers crossed with that one. There'll be a fair bit of work to do. So here we go, folks. Epigraph number 18, if we like. The convoluted wording of legalisms grew up around the necessity to hide from ourselves the violence we intend towards each other. Between depriving a man of 1 hour of his life and depriving him of his life, there exists only a difference of degree. You have done violence to him, consumed his energy. Elaborate euphemisms may conceal your intent to kill, but behind any use of power over another, the ultimate assumption remains. I feed on your energy. And this is an addenda to orders and counsel from the Emperor Paul Muad'Dib. So there we go. Legalisms, the protection of law, etc., this kind of thing. And the use of law is basically a means of, how we put it, hiding our own violent intents towards each other, if you like. It's an interesting way of looking at the law. I have my own opinions about the law and how it works. But particularly in the ancient world, I suppose. And yeah, oddly enough, I was thinking about Daedalus today and his murder of Talos, and how he was able to drag the body of Talos away from Athens under the use of a law, and the law is to do with dead serpents lying on the ground, this kind of thing, which is it was very interesting actually. Just something I caught when I was having a read through. It might have been Apollodorus there. And I was just curious, is this the same? I was actually wondering, was this the same Talos as the Talos on the island, that the big bronze statue? And of course it's not. But it's the initial murder. It's Daedalus is jealous of this guy, so he pushes him on, takes him up to the top of a cliff and shoves him off. And then he goes and grabs the body and drags it through the street in a bag. But it's the reason why he gets away with it for up to a point is because of an Athenian law. Cynthia said, this epigraph follows on the epigraph of chapter 17 when Paul said he was the supreme energy eater of this domain. Now this addendum, he admits the violence of it. Yes, indeed. Yeah, and I suppose it's relevant to this, and we'll get to it, and I suppose I feed on your energy. Yeah, totally. Is that we're going to get I suppose that the comment within this chapter about Atreides law, not Fremen. We live under Atreides law, not Fremen law, and it's to do with being blind, I suppose. So, and we start with the moon again, don't we? First moon stood high over the city as Paul, his shield activated and shimmering around him, emerged from the cul-de-sac. A wind off the massive whirled sand and dust down the narrow street, causing Bijaz to blink and shield his eyes. We must hurry, the dwarf muttered. Hurry, hurry! Paul, you sense danger? Paul asked, probing. I know danger. An abrupt sense of peril very near was followed almost immediately by a figure joining them out of a doorway. Bijaz crouched and whimpered. And of course it's Stilgar, isn't it? It was only Stilgar, and I like this, moving like a war machine. Head thrust forward, feet striking the streets solidly. Swiftly, Paul explained the value of the dwarf, handed Bijaz over to Stilgar. The pace of the vision moved here with great rapidity. Stilgar sped away with Bijaz. So that's exit Stilgar and Bijaz from this, if you like. And then security guards enveloped Paul. Orders were given to send men down the street towards the house beyond Otheym's. Pardon me. The men hurried to obey, shadows amongst shadows. So that's the wee point I was making there. Just the pace of the vision moved here with great rapidity. So does the action in this chapter. Things are starting to speed up within Dune Messiah as we head towards the conclusion of the book. And I like Frank's pacing here. I always think that Dune Messiah is a very easy book to get through, but we should expect this kind of, let's move towards the pinnacle of the action, this kind of thing. So the pace picks up within the book too. And of course, we have Stilgar and Bijaz out of the way. And based on what we talked about last week about what does Paul know, well, he pretty much knows everything here at this point. He's merely, I suppose, playing a role, if you like, now. And so orders being given to send his men down the street towards the house beyond Otheym, that's going to, it's not going to go well for those people. And Paul's thoughts here are more sacrifices. And I suppose the question is, what are they being sacrificed to? Because he's letting these people die, and he doesn't have to. He's particularly walking a path here, isn't he, that he sees as being set out for him. Pardon me. And that there can be no real deviation from. Except, of course, that we know there are deviations from the path, but they seem to be slight, if you like. But more sacrifices to the Atreides Empire, really, if you like. So a guard officer says, we want live prisoners. One of the guard officer hissed. This hiss, the sound was a vision echo, we're told, in Paul's ears. It went with solid precision here. Vision, reality, tick for tick. Ornithopters drifted down across the moon. That's something that got me thinking about Denis Villeneuve's Dune, and that the ornithopters are not ornithopters. And what do the ornithopters represent? And for anyone who's familiar with sort of Greek and Roman mythology, and in particular omens, so the fact that Denis Villeneuve's made these into kind of almost like dragonflies, that the ornithopter, the clues in the word, it's a bird. They should be like birds, and they should supposed to fly like birds. Have a wee look on YouTube. You'll see some quite interesting. I've seen a few really, really cool looking robot ornithopters, which fly like birds. But the point, I suppose, is within the symbolism of myth, and in particular, I suppose, the divine interaction with a hero is, as much as we talk about the Atreides hawk, I see the ornithopters as representing the eagle, if you like. And the eagle is within classical Greek and Roman mythology, is a divine representation of Zeus himself. And it's also often connected to a serpent, if you like. So if you imagine that the worms within the desert, think of them as a serpent, if you like, and the ornithopters as the eagle. There's so many kind of stories of how the eagle, whether it successfully lifts the snake up and drops it and kills it, or maybe the snake gets away, this kind of thing, are often interpreted as omens. This, if you see what I mean. Yeah. So it just got me thinking that, in terms of symbolism, if you like, but ornithopters sort of coming in a wee minute or two. We'll have a wee look at it. But this hiss, if you like, again, the vision echo that we're told about here, we're told it's going with solid precision. There's no variation from what Paul has seen in his vision memory, if you like, and what's actually happening. Tick for tick, the clock's going. The ornithopters drifted down across the moon. And I would, if imagine yourself in, ancient Greece and seeing an eagle soar across the moon. And people go, Zeus is up to something, this kind of thing, if you like. It's one of those interesting ones, isn't it, that Aeschylus, the father of tragedy, was killed by, depending on how you look at it, he was either killed by a tortoise or by an eagle. But it was supposedly an eagle picked up a tortoise and they take them way up and then it dropped it. came down and hit him on the head. And I think I've always wondered, is that tragic or is that comic? And I suppose ultimately it's comic for the father of tragedy, isn't it? Get all things tragic, or was it comedy equals tragedy plus time, if you see what I mean. So there we go. The night was full of Imperial troopers attacking. And of course, these Imperial troopers are Paul's soldiers now. Not the well, he is the emperor, but they're not Shaddam the Fourth. And it's just interesting to hear his own men referred to as Imperial troopers. So here we go, the stone burner. A soft hiss grew out of the other sounds, climbed to a roar. While they still heard the sibilance, it picked up a terracotta glow that hid the stars and engulfed the moon. And again, the moon really being, if we take it as, we can take the moon as a symbol for all sorts of things, can't we? It can be the Fremen, it can be Paul, it can be Chani, etc., this kind of thing. So Paul, knowing that sound and glow from the earliest nightmare glimpses of his vision, felt an odd sense of fulfillment. It went the way it must. And I've kind of asked the question here, I wonder what alternatives are there here? And there must be loads of alternatives. Sacrificing his men down the street, maybe instead of saying, here, hang on a minute, this kind of thing. That would be a slight difference to the path, wouldn't it? But I suppose if we think about chaos theory and the whole, the butterfly effect, this kind of thing, that the slightest change might have enormous consequences for whatever it is that Paul sees. So, stone burner! Someone screamed. Stone burner! The cry was all around him. Stone burner! Stone burner! Must be a stone burner, eh? Because it was required of him, Paul threw a protective arm across his face and dove for the low lip of the curb. It already was too late, of course. So here we get the stone burner here. And I have a few wee questions about it, but maybe we'll get them answered later on. So the stone burner, we're told, where Otheym's house had been, there stood now a pillar of fire, a blinding jet roaring at the heavens. It gave off a dirty brilliance, which threw into sharp relief every ballet movement of the fighting and fleeing men, the tipping retreat of ornithopters. For every member of the frantic throng, it was too late. Now, I kind of always wondered what the stone burner is exactly. And the first thing I kind of having a wee quick think about, the first thing I thought that might be was a particle beam, but clearly it's not. And possibly some kind of, I don't know, atomic fueled kind of mining device or something like that. Some sort of device that's been either subsumed, is that the right word? Subverted, if you like, into use of a weapon. And I'm not too sure we get the answer. I think it's kind of a vague thing with Frank Herbert. I even had a wee nosy. It's not in the Dune Encyclopedia, for example. And of course, it was already too late, of course. And I've written here, the Emperor Paul Atreides is a slave to time. And that's obviously paradoxical, isn't it, that the Emperor is a slave? And the other thing, I suppose, I've got a little bunch of skulls on the book for that we haven't had for a wee while. There we go. We've got it, if you can see them there, folks. Get that out the road, up at the top. And of course, we've got the people dying here are Otheym, Dhuri, the Imperial Guards, and also the different conspiracy members that were in the house just over the way from Otheym's house. I'll just have to write that in. That hasn't come through very well. Conspiracy members. There we go. But the one thing that I find I keep pointing out about Dune is the little people, if you like, how insignificant the sort of body count, the death count is. And in this chapter, as much as we had quite an interesting chapter where we got to sort of meet Dhuri and Otheym in a bit of detail. These people have just been killed, and there's no mention of it throughout the rest of the chapter. We do get a mention of Otheym's house being blasted, etc. But there's no real mention of Otheym and Dhuri being victims, and of course Paul knows that they're victims. Especially in light of everything that went on in the last chapter. Could they not have went with him? This kind of thing. This is the way it's meant to be. They were meant to die here, but we're not going to get a discussion about, oh, poor Otheym and poor Dhuri, who helped me here, who brought me obedience, this kind of thing. They're both dead, and there's no consideration of them whatsoever in this chapter. So it's where Otheym's house had been. There stood now a pillar of fire. I'll just read this again. A blinding jet roaring at the heavens that gave off a dirty brilliance which threw into sharp relief every ballet movement of the fighting and fleeing men, the tipping retreat of ornithopters. So the pillar of fire here is a how would we put it? Well, I've written down here something. Is a theophany. That's the word we're looking for. And a pillar of there within the Hebrew Bible, we have a pillar of fire and a pillar of cloud, if that makes sense. I'm not sure they're two separate things. How do we look at this? But the general sense is that during the night, this pillar is of fire, but during the day, it's a pillar of cloud or smoke, if you like. These are basically within the Bible manifestations of the Abrahamic God. How would you put a visible symbol of the presence of God? So the word theophany, I suppose, is from the Greek theos, which is God, which is to show, if you like. So a visible symbol of a living God, if you like. And for anybody who's interested in checking this stuff out, you can find it in the book of Exodus 13, chapter 13 onwards to chapter 17, verse 14, and then on chapter 29. It's also mentioned in the book of Psalms, the book of Nehemiah, the book of Isaiah, and the book of Ezekiel. Let me just see if I can bring this up a wee second. I thought it was quite an interesting little stub on Wikipedia. Let's have a look. Oh, that was stupid of me. I typed in something else there. The pillars of fire and cloud, if you have a look at that, that's how the title of the Wikipedia page is. I'll just read you a wee quick bit of it here. So the pillar of fire and pillar of cloud are a dual theophany, manifestation of God described in various places in the first 5 books of the Hebrew Bible. The pillars are said to have guided the Israelites through the desert during the exodus from Egypt. The pillar of cloud provided a visible guide for the Israelites during the day, while the pillar of fire lit their way by night. And it goes on to talk about the biblical narrative there. So pillar of cloud and fire first mentioned in Exodus 13, shortly after Moses leads the Israelites out of their captivity in Egypt. The narrative states that the pillar of cloud went ahead of them by day to guide their way, and the pillar of fire by night to give them light. And there's a whole chunk of stuff there. Traditional interpretation. I had a wee good read at this. It's quite interesting. The symbolic significance of it, etc. I quite like this. If you go down to the symbolic significance, it says that some writers have suggested that the description of pillars of fire and cloud may be an obscure reference to an actual signaling device employed by the Israelites. Pardon me. A historic parallel to such a practice can be found in Quintus Curtius's History of Alexander. Curtius explains how Alexander would ready his camp for the march. And here we have a quotation from it. When we wished to move his camp, he used to give the signal with the trumpet, the sound of which was often not readily enough heard amid the noise made by the bustling soldiers. Therefore, he set up a pole on top of the general's tent, which could be clearly seen from all sides. And from this, a lofty signal, visible to all alike, was watched for: fire by night, smoke in the daytime. And it also says that Arab caravans also commonly made use of braziers as a guiding signal. So it's an interesting little stub. That's the right term. And something quite interesting actually about it, if you have a look down at the bottom there, it says that the image excuse me, of the pillar of fire, pillar of cloud, if you like, was selected for the frontispiece of the Geneva Bible, published by Sir Rowland Hill in 1560, itself picked up by Benjamin Franklin as a possible inspiration for the first Great Seal of the United States of America. So there we go. That's kind of, love all that sort of stuff. Very interesting. But yeah, check that out if anybody's into that stuff. So as much as we could see that this is an atomic weapon, we could also see it as a kind of divine thing, if you like. And as I said, it's kind of how I sometimes look at the ornithopters and the worms as well. So for every member of this frantic throng, it was too late. The ground grew hot beneath Paul. He heard the sound of running stop. Men threw themselves down all around him, every one of them aware that there was no point in running. The first damage had been done, and now they must wait out the extent of the stone burner's potency. So I kind of get it. I kind of get the sense that it's some kind of bomb, if you like. It's on the. I get the sense that it's on the ground. Otherwise, I would think of this as some kind of particle beam, turning the ground to slag, this kind of thing. But it doesn't. It would be. It doesn't seem to be coming down from orbit or anything like that. So I just kind of think of it as some kind of bomb that sets off this kind of, huge pillar of fire. Yeah. And so we have something's be comment about the J rays that come from it, etc. But otherwise, Frank's a bit vague on the science of it, which he tends to be. So let's hear. So the ground grew hot beneath Paul. You heard the sound of running stop. And I suppose from this point on, within the chapter, a lot of what we're reading is about what we're hearing. Does that make sense? We're not going to get too much of a visual picture within this chapter, and it's more to do with what we hear, if you like, which I suppose is Frank's way of kind of, I think, imitating the blindness of the people on the ground, if you like. So the first damage is this big pillar of fire that obliterates Otheym's house and pretty much most of the street. First damage had been done. Now they must wait out the extent of the stone burner's potency. So this is as opposed to it must expel its fuel. So here's what we're told here. The thing's radiation, which no man could outrun, already had penetrated their flesh. The peculiar result of stone burner radiation already was at work in them. What else this weapon might do now lay in the planning of the men who had used it, the men who had defied the great convention to use it. And here we go. Gods, a stone burner, someone whimpered. I don't want to be blind. Who does? The harsh voice of a trooper from down the street. I must have not written that down properly. That doesn't sound right. Bear with me a wee second. Just get me notes here. The harsh voice of a trooper far down the street. Where are we? What did I write? Oh, yes, I wrote 4. Sorry. Apologies, folks. So the harsh voice of a trooper far down the street. Who does? Who wants to be blind? And the Tlilaxu will sell many eyes. Here, someone near Paul growled. Now shut up and wait. So we can't see we're not being given any visual description of the people chatting or what's going on. And I think it's a good wee technique here. I think it works very well. So they waited. Here we get, again, the qualities of a stone burner, I suppose. So Paul remained silent, thinking what this weapon implied. Too much fuel in it, and it cut its way into the planet's core. That's what kind of made me think it was some sort of mining tool. Dune's molten level, we're told, lay deep, but the more dangerous for that. Such pressures released and out of control might split a planet, scattering lifeless bits and pieces through space. The one thing it actually got me thinking a little bit further on down the road, and I suppose we'll give a big spoiler warning, if you like, for if anybody doesn't want to know what happens to the planet Arrakis. shut off for a few seconds here, but essentially, Arrakis is destroyed, isn't it, by what's called an obliterator? And I was just kind of wondering, would it be a weapon? There's a lot of evolution of technology within the Dune universe, and I don't think it's ever particularly described in any real detail either. And I was kind of wondering, is that a weapon that would have evolved from this, if you like? So it's something that seems to be burrowing down, if you like. And as much as what you see is this pillar of fire on the surface, it's also heading downwards into the planet. Too much fuel. So whoever's prepared this bomb, if they haven't known what they're doing, they could easily blow up Arrakis at this point, destroy it, and that would be the end of our story, wouldn't it? So yeah, and it's a weapon that's defied the whoever's used this, we're told, has defied the Great Convention. And if we think about a reiteration of the action within Dune, I suppose around almost this similar stage in Dune is where Paul sets off the Atreides atomics. The really stupid thing, I think, in Denis Villeneuve's film is that they have him standing there looking straight at a nuclear explosion, which is not a good idea. He would be blinded, wouldn't he? Yeah, I thought that was a dum 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 dum, one of those. Dum 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 dum. There we go. So I think it's dying down a bit. Someone said. Paul responds here. It's just digging deeper. Paul cautioned. Stay put, all of you. Stilgar will be sending help. Stilgar got away. Stilgar got away. And it's kind of, I was quite pleased that Stilgar got away, if you like. I like Stilgar's character quite a fair bit in this, and all the way through the first 3 books. The ground's hot, someone complained. They dared use atomics. A trooper near Paul protested. The sound's diminishing, someone down the street said. And Paul ignored the words and concentrated on his fingertips against the street. He could feel the rolling rumbling of the thing. Deep, deep. My eyes, someone cried. I can't see. And Paul's thoughts are here that someone closer to it than I was. So again, we're kind of getting a little bit of a sense of that blindness, if you like. I've been blind for about 2 minutes, and I did not enjoy the sensation at all. And I had a motorcycle accident in, where would it be, Mallorca, when I was about 14 or 15. Ended up having about 200 pieces of gravel picked out of me, and spent it was on the second day of my holiday, and spent the rest of the holiday looking like the mummy, covered in bandages. But for when I came off the bike, I'd kind of something happened with the brakes that they locked up. It was a gravel road, and I went down on one side and flipped over onto the other, and kind of ended up on the middle of the road, and I lost my vision basically, and I think it would have been what you might call hysterical blindness. But the first thing I remember is my dad come up to me going, "Are you okay?" And the first thing I said was nothing to do with all the pain and cuts, and I've got scars and stuff from this. I was just going, I can't see. And he's going, it's okay, relax, calm down, you'll be all right. But I was going, but I can't see. And I didn't think I'd hurt my eyes at all. And it must have been, I might have hit my head or something, but I genuinely couldn't see at all. Nothing but blackness for about 2 minutes. And then my vision returned. So I've been blind for about 2 minutes, and I did not enjoy the experience at all. I found it very freaky. Very scary indeed. You know. So someone closer to it than I was, Paul thought. He still could see to the end of the cul-de-sac when he lifted his head, although there was a mistness across the scene. A red-yellow glow filled the area where Otheym's house and its neighbour had been. Pieces of adjoining buildings made dark patterns as they crumbled into the glowing pit. Pardon me. And again, this pit, if you like, that's created by the stone burner is kind of interesting. So I suppose we're getting the difference between being able to see and having a vision, if you like, and how this works for Paul in this chapter. We're told Paul climbed to his feet. He felt the stone burner die, silence beneath him. His body was wet with perspiration against the still suit's slickness, too much for the suit to accommodate. The air he drew into his lungs carried the heat and sulphur stench of the burner. Sulphur's a smell that's always associated with underworlds, isn't it? Pardon me. And I think it's interesting that if we think about all the people here who are dying, people who really don't have to die, and as I said, by the we get through this chapter, you will hear no mention of Otheym and no mention of Dhuri at all. And that was their house that just got hit. Not so much of poor Otheym, poor Dhuri. We keep getting his house mentioned, I suppose, but Otheym's house and its neighbour had been pieces of a the red yellow glow filled the area where Otheym's house and its neighbour had been, but that's where Otheym and Dhuri had also been. And I find it, I think it's part of what Herbert does with the Atreides characters, etc. It's something that we've noticed all the way through. Is just the indifference to the little people, to the whoever gets killed. Well, this kind of thing. But there's not even that here, I think. And I thought it was kind of interesting that his body is wet with perspiration. It's not that it's shedding tears, but it's if you see it, I mean, it's sweating. Is he sweating for the dead? I feel like he's giving up so much moisture that his still suit can't handle it. He drew in heat and sulphur as he looked at the troopers beginning to stand up around, faded into darkness. That's kind of how. So I figured that was just the radiation doing the damage, and that's how I've done his wee eyes. I like this. I like to scribble characters' eyes in this. I've got lots of doodles of people's eyes throughout these wee notebooks that I make, just to give me a wee sort of sense of what's going on, because they're quite important, I think. And we talk about sort of vision, if you like, as a theme, if you like, within Dune, and a particular motif. So as the mist on Paul's eyes faded into darkness, he summoned up his oracular vision of these moments, then turned and strode along the track that time had carved for him, fitting himself into the vision so tightly that it could not escape. And I kind of was wondering about that. Maybe somebody could check this for me there. I wasn't very happy with the use of the word "it" there. Let me just run through it again. Turned and strode along the track that time had carved for him, fitting himself into the vision so tightly that it could not escape. What does it mean there? And I was wondering that he could not escape would actually make more sense. I just didn't. I thought it was possibly a misprint of some kind, or a misuse of a word, something not quite right about it. But if it's the "it" that we're referring to, if it's an "it," then it's time is what he's talking about. If that makes sense, fitting himself into the vision so tightly that time could not escape. I don't know. It doesn't really make sense to me. Dawn saying, I don't remember Lady Jessica being menacing and hostile like she was portrayed in the film. I thought she was like almost like a rabid dog, barking at people, that kind of thing. She certainly lacked, how would we put it, all of the qualities that Jessica is supposed to have. Poise, elegance, control. And she's a powerful figure in the Dune series, I believe. But her power is not blunt force trauma, if you see what I mean. And that's kind of what I got from the way the character was portrayed. Almost demented, to be honest with you. Cynthia said, my text also has it. I wonder if it is a description of how desperately Paul clings to his vision because it's now the only way he can see. Yeah, it's. I mean, usually with misprints and stuff like that, we're just a letter out or something, and it can cause, or possibly a punctuation mark. It's yeah, clings to, well, if and that's what the it would have to refer to, isn't it? So tightly that it could not escape. So it could be time or it could be his vision, fitting himself into the vision so tightly. So he's fitting himself into it that it could not escape. The track that time become fitting himself. Yeah, it could be either. Something it's one of those things. As much as I think this chapter is well written, I would have picked, but I don't know. I might have used a few more words there maybe to help. The vision, his vision. That's the only. Yeah, he's hanging on for dear life. That kind of thing. If you see what I mean. Yeah, I would agree. But I actually fitting himself into the vision so tightly. It would make sense to me that if it said that he could not escape, that this is the final enslavement, if you like, of Paul into this oracular vision. But yeah, it's just maybe it's just one of those wee words that just doesn't flow quite right, or maybe I'm just being a wee bit too anal about it, as usual. Oh yes, I have, Don. I have indeed. Don Ragnar saying, "Have you seen the Count of Monte Cristo with Jim Caviezel? He would have been my Leto Atreides, not Oscar Isaac." Leto Atreides is always miscast. If you read the description of him, I don't know who would be good to make who would, I think it's Leto Atreides is not white, so everybody who's played him so far has been white. I'd say the actor who's come closest to portraying him properly, as in character, if you like, is William Hurt. I would put someone like oh goodness gracious, let me think. I was thinking Dev Patel would be too young. I think Dev Patel would have made a good Paul Atreides, to be honest with you, because you could have you can make that. He's an actor who you can make look quite young, if you see what I mean, and then take him through. But I don't know, who was I thinking on. I'll tell you who I'm thinking on if you give me a wee second. I'm having a brain fart. It's not that I think Idris Elba would be a good Leto Atreides. That's who I would cast. But yes, Jim Caviezel. I kind of wasn't too sure about that. I watched it. I thought it was okay, that version. It's been a long time. It's been out for quite a while. There was a kind of Hollywood was hitting the Alexander Dumas films, weren't they, for a wee while? And they were all pretty awful. I think the definitive ones are those Alexander Salkind films. I think they're fantastic. It's fantastic. The Richard Chamberlain one's really good. But Jim Caviezel would make a good he'd make a good Leto Atreides. He's a good actor. Was a film that he was in that I really liked, and it was a kind of Mad Maxy type thing. I'm trying to remember, was it The Highwayman or something like that? No, that's not the name of it. I'll tell you what, I'll bring the actor up. I'll quickly have a look at the film I'm thinking on, and I thought it was a really good kind of. My wife's been watching Person of Interest there for a wee while. It's gone on to Burn Notice. Let's see. I suppose it's what I wouldn't have been. Let me. What's the film I'm thinking on? Let's just go filmography. Let's see. Highwayman. Oh, it wasn't. Is that it? Yeah, I thought that. Yeah, it is. Yeah. Highwayman is a 2004 action thriller film directed by Robert Harmon. An American-Canadian production, stars Jim Caviezel, Rona Mitra, Frankie Faison, and Colm Feore. The score was composed by Mark Isham. The film was released in February 2004. I really enjoyed that. I thought that was good. A man named Rennie Cray is motivated by revenge to track down and kill the man who ran over his wife. A serial killer immobilized by the man himself. The killer uses a wheelchair. He drives a 1972 Cadillac Eldorado to stalk and kill his victims in car accidents. when the serial killer makes a young woman his next target, the man has to stop the killer once and for all. I quite enjoyed that. But yeah, well, I'm trying to sort of remember if you sort of you say a particular actor, what sticks out in your mind about them. But I really like that film. Don saying, I'm mixed race. Can I play Leto the Second and God Emperor of Dune movie and save the cinematic franchise? No bother. I kind of wanted to put myself up for it. Actually, I thought go with Leto as a Paddy. I know. I quite enjoy. Whenever I was doing my videos, I really quite enjoyed reading his speeches. No, quite intimidating. But yeah, well, the descriptions of Leto and Leto the First is that he has olive-colored skin, and I took that to mean his skin is either green, brown, or black, pretty much. But I think you can take it with they're green. That would be interesting, wouldn't it? Go fully kind of weird sci-fi that the Atreides have green skin. I think that would be quite interesting. Oh, yeah, I wouldn't mind actually sometime on the things I would love to do if I had time. I'd happily give you my ideal cast for Dune if you like, something like that. Do that. Who would be, out of sort of modern actors if you like. But it would be an interesting thing to do. Could you cast Dune based on all the actors who've been alive in the since Hollywood began, if you like, that kind of thing? Who would you pick for what role? But I did like Jurgen Prochnow as Leto in the David Lynch version as well, But it struck me. I just thought that as much as you hear Denis Villeneuve talking about how visual a sort of person he is, that I think he's done things based on how they looked in the David Lynch movie, and I think he's cast Oscar Isaac and presented him in a way that makes him look like Jurgen Prochnow and David Lynch's Dune, if you see what I mean. And of course, I suppose the idea that the Atreides are Greeks. I always thought that the Greeks and the olives and this kind of thing, that there's lots of that stuff here. And so we're going to have a wee chat about some of it tonight, Let's see, where are we? Oh yes, right. That was that I was having a bit of. I wondered about it there. It's just sometimes I do wonder about these wee things, and I do like to pick things apart. He felt himself grow aware of this place as a multitudinous possession. Reality welded to prediction. Somebody was asking last week, is this the multitude within other memory? And I wasn't too sure, but it was actually a point that I hadn't considered. And we have the use of this term again. And I thought it was a pretty fair thing to consider, to be honest with you. He felt himself grow aware of this place as a multitudinous possession. So something that's owned by many, if you see what I mean. Reality welded to prediction. Is this something that the multitude within him kind of have sought to direct him towards? That kind of thing. And I suppose that there are bits in Dune where the multitude can kick off, if you like. With another memory. But reality welded to prediction. Welded, Moans and groans, again the sounds, if you like, of his troopers arose all around him as the men realized their blindness. Hold fast, Paul shouted. Help is coming. And as the complaints persisted, he said, This is Muad'Dib. I command you to hold fast. Help comes. Silence. And I love Frank's really good at doing that. The use of a little single word here, a little single word there. There are writers that you can tear through their books, and paragraph after paragraph, lengthy chunk, and the little, very little like this has a lot of effect. And especially if we can just hold fast, as Paul says, for a second and let that single word absorb in. I think there's some good. The speed of this chapter, the rapidity of it. The pacing of it and the use of sound is really, really good. And how best to sort of really emphasize that silence. It's really well done. I absolutely like that. Love it. And then true to his vision, A nearby guardsman said, "Is it truly the Emperor? Which of you can see? Tell me." Of course, if they've all been around the stone burner, nobody can see, I suppose. And this is what Paul points out. None of us have eyes. Sorry, none of us has eyes. I would have said have. None of us has eyes, Paul said. They have taken my eyes as well, but not my vision. So he's blind, but he can see, this kind of thing. I can see you standing there, a dirty wall within touching distance on your left. Now wait bravely. Stilgar comes with our friends. And again, we have these sounds, if you like, the thwack, thwack, holy onomatopoeia, Frank Herbert. Again, it's good stuff. The thwack, thwack of many thopters grew louder all around. There was the sound of hurrying feet. Paul watched his friends come, matching their sounds to his oracular vision. Stilgar, Paul shouted, waving an arm. Over here. Hello, this kind of thing. Of course, Stilgar, I really like Stilgar's character in this chapter. There's not much for him to do, but it's what is said and how he behaves, I think, is really, really well done and very true to the character, and it breaks your heart a little bit for him. You can kind of feel for Stilgar here. Thanks to Shai Hulud, Stilgar cried, running up to Paul. You're not. And there's that silence again. In the sudden silence, Paul's vision showed him Stilgar staring with an expression of agony at the ruined eyes of his friend and emperor. Oh, my lord, Stilgar groaned. Usul, Usul, Usul. What of the stone burner? One of the newcomers shouted. And that's quite, oh dear, poor Stilgar, he's gutted here, It's ended, Paul said. Raising his voice, he gestured. And put up barriers. Lively now. And he turned back, focused more on him here. Do you see, my lord? Stilgar asked, wonder in his tone. How can you see? And I've got a wee mistake in my copy of the book here. And it's just a pointless one, but I'll point it out anyway. Let me see. Footnote 33. I've got a quotation mark before it's for answer. As if it's speech when it's not. So for answer, so there you go, I've just written a wee mistake there. Paul put a finger out to touch Stilgar's cheek above the still-suit mouth cap, felt tears. You need give no moisture to me, old friend, Paul said. I am not dead. But your eyes! They've blinded my body, but not my vision, Paul said. Ah, still, I live in an apocalyptic dream. My steps fit into it so precisely that I fear most of all I will grow bored reliving the thing. Sorry, that's reliving, isn't it? Living the thing so exactly. Let me just check that. Yeah, no, that's me. That's my mistake this time. That's my bad handwriting. Let me just fix that. Apocalyptic. The use of that word, I suppose, is always interesting to me. It means hidden, really. Reliving, yes, indeed. I've got reliving. Reliving the thing so exactly. I'll just read that again. They've blinded my body, but not my vision, Paul said. Ah, still, I live in an apocalyptic dream. My steps fit into it so precisely that I fear most of all I will grow bored reliving the thing so exactly. Boredom is kind of, yeah, how he's going with that. I don't know. And dear Usul, I don't try to understand it. Accept it. I am in the world beyond the world here. For me, they are the same. I need no hand to guide me. I see every movement all around me. I see every expression on your face. I have no eyes, yet I see. And there's our great, I suppose, motif of paradox within Dune. That's a very good point, Cynthia. I'll just read Cynthia's comment there. It's an interesting shift from imperial troops to friends. Who are Paul's friends now? Yeah, I suppose that they're all. It is interesting. I suppose that we consider that they're trusted men, perhaps. Um, and later on, in fact, just at the end of the chapter, how he talks to, and I don't know if you remember way back in June. There's the sort of banter that goes on between the Fremen communications specialists. We've got a communications officer and a weapons specialist again in this book, and again it's that reiteration that we have, but it's kind of at the last thing. It almost would fit Zen Diesel as Dawn put it, and Timothée Chalamet, isn't it? Call Channy, that rather than call it's absolutely informal. Uses her own first name with It's interesting we never hear that Channy referred to as Channy Kings, do we? Which would be her surname. And maybe it's because she's amongst the Fremen. We don't seem to see many surnames amongst Fremen at all. Yeah, buddies, friends. Sacrifices were the ones, more sacrifices earlier. So we can go something to increase from your point of view. Sacrifices to Imperial troops, to friends. It's confusing, isn't it? But I suppose they're all in this kind of mutual blind club now. What of the Stoneburner? Let's see. Do you see? Where did I get to there? Sorry. Oh, yes. Don't try to understand it. Accept it. I am the world beyond this world here. For me, they are the same. I need no hand to guide me. I see every movement all around me. I see every expression on your face. I have no eyes, yet I see. Paradox. Which is a big. I think it's the one word. And I suppose we pointed out, and it's in my conclusion to the old PhD stuff. It's the best way to describe. It's the one word. If you had to pick one word to describe Frank Herbert's writings within the Dune series, paradoxical, and deliberately so, I think. The other wee thing, let me see, was that we had Paul's fingertips earlier on the ground. And whenever Stilgar says, "How can you see?" for an answer, Paul put a finger out to touch Stilgar's cheek above the still suit mouth cap, felt the tears. So Stilgar's crying. And of course he says, "You need give no moisture to me, old friend, I am not dead." But it's, Stilgar's, it shows the level of upset that Stilgar has. But the other thing I wanted to point out was in the previous chapter, Bijaz is going on about the finger, that Paul is a finger, and I'm his finger, this kind of thing. Yeah, let me see. Quite a bit going on in the previous chapter, didn't we? Let me just see if I can find it. In fact, I drew a picture of it. Yeah, there he is. I'll look for the picture of the finger. Here it is here. Just, "You've sired, sire," Bijaz said, grinning. "You're much more than the base Usul. You're the Atreides Emperor Paul Muad'Dib, and you're my finger." And I'm wondering, is that a reference to, we had a wee chat about what fingers represent, etc. in this particular thing. He held up the index finger of his right hand. Dhuri had said, "Bijaz, you tempt fate." And what he replied was, "I tempt my finger," Bijaz protested, with voice squeaking. He pointed at Usul. "I point at Usul. Is my finger not Usul himself, or is it a reflection of something more base?" He brought the finger close to his eyes, examined it with a mocking grin. First one side and then the other. It's merely a finger after all. So that was that. We've had fingers mentioned a couple of times in this chapter as well, but it's been Paul's fingers here. And just tend to pay attention to little things like that when we see that It's Herbert often sets one little motif or metaphor or simile of this kind of thing up in one chapter and runs with it in the next. But maybe it's just a finger, as Bijaz said. I think it's good. I think once we've got to this point, it's most likely clear that I think Paul, well, that Bijaz does have prescience, and that this is possibly some reference to this. Maybe I always think it's funny, isn't it? That Paul, the first person that Paul kills, he does so with his toe. Bizarre. So don't try to. I live in an apocalyptic dream. Apocalyptic. A lot of people talk about post-apocalypse, this kind of thing. So apocalyptic, etc., is something that's hidden. If you see what I mean, unseen, concealed, if you like. Hence, often, if you even was the Book of Revelations within the Christian Bible. Talk about apocalypse and revelation. Apocalypse is something hidden. A revelation is something that's revealed. That's it. It's got nothing to do with end of the world type nuclear destruction or something like that. I live in an apocalyptic dream. You could take it to mean that kind of thing, but I would take it in the true meaning of the word as hidden. And then on with that there, let's see, where are we? So Stilgar shook his head sharply. Sire, we must conceal your affliction from. We hide it from no man, Paul said. But the law. And this is, of course, about blind Fremen being given to the desert, if you like. And back to, this is the bit that's relevant to our epigraph in this chapter as well. The convoluted wording of legalisms, etc., etc. How you look at laws and how they're created and all of this stuff, and particularly in the ancient world when very few people can read and write. The written, all a law is, in modern day times, I suppose, is a written word that says you cannot do something. And if you do something that we say you cannot do, there'll be a punishment for it. And that's generally what a law is. And so I don't know. A lot of people have a certain level of respect for the law that I certainly do not. I look at laws should be universal and they should apply to everybody, or else they're not laws at all. They're simply oppression systems, But the law, we live by Atreides law now. Sorry, I'll read that again. We live by Atreides law now. Still, the Fremen law that the blind should be abandoned in the desert applies only to the blind. I am not blind. But it'll apply to all these other people here. I live in the cycle of being where the war of good and evil has its arena. We are at a turning point. We are at a turning point in the succession of ages, and we have our parts to play. So again, this sense of fatalism, if you like, with Paul, the lack of free will, that he's playing a part now. I don't know. It's the things that sort of make me think about Paul as a hero, as a villain. Oh goodness, there was somebody was saying that I got a few emails. I must get back to those people as soon as possible. And apologies, I've had such a busy week. One of them was recommending. Somebody was recommending a channel to me there, and there's a couple of good sort of video essays on Dune. One looking at a comparison between, I think it's a Lost Chord, a comparison of Dune and what it would be Asimov's Foundation series. And there's stuff in it I don't agree with, but I think there's time and effort's been put into it, and it's well worth a listen. And they've also got a video about why. There's quite a lot of these things about why Paul Atreides is not a hero, and he is, and absolutely no shadow of a doubt about it whatsoever that he is a hero. But it's, what do you think heroes are? Why do you think heroes are good people? Because if you look at, I've pointed this out many a time. If you look at heroes in the classical world, they're not nice people at all. Naughty, and that they tend to have a very bad ending. Well, the one example I love to point out, if anybody's ever seen the old, the Ray Harryhausen, Jason and the Argonauts, for example, that the story ends at a particular point where it looks like a bit of a happy ever after, but it's absolutely monstrous what happens afterwards. And I've always loved the irony that the Argo falls on Jason's head and kills him. That's how he dies. The ship that brings him his fame, if you like, flattens him. But he's an absolute shit. To be honest with you, Heracles is a person who murders his entire family. And the 12 or 13 labors of Heracles are actually a form of religious atonement for that crime. So Theseus is about. We can just go on. You can list them all. They're what we think of as a hero in modern day terms, if you like, is more likely a protagonist. This kind of thing. But Paul is a hero. Frank Herbert tells us so, and he's a very particularly constructed hero. And the whole point of these books are that superheroes, if you like, heroes beyond the ordinary ken of men, if you like, are incredibly dangerous to society. There are villains aplenty in the stories, but Paul is a hero. But it's a lot of people take that as from, I suppose, the kind of Joseph Campbell's Hero of a Thousand Faces book seems to have had an inordinate influence on the world of mythography. I'll be honest with you, it hasn't. It's had an enormous influence on the world of psychology and its psychoanalysis, this kind of thing, and Hollywood, and possibly writing within Hollywood. But outside of those realms, within certainly the classical sphere, within proper mythography, this kind of thing, it's considered a lot of hooey. And from our point of view as people who read Dune, systemic approach flawed, to be honest with you. Just my point being, I suppose, check out those Lost Chord videos. I subscribed to the channel. I thought the style, the videos were very good, very interesting. I said I don't agree with everything in it, but you don't have to agree with people on things. But I thought they were well done. So Lost Chord, he's got a bit comparison of Dune with Asimov's Foundation, but I think he also has a video on why Paul is not the hero. But it's very much, I think, to do with a Joseph Campbell type approach. And I actually think there's much more of an influence of Lord Raglan's work on the hero in Dune than any other. I think it's dominant in it. There we go. Let's have a wee look. But yes, we're going about figures and stuff there for a minute there. And yeah, I suppose I live in the cycle of being where the war of good and evil has its arena. We are at a turning point in the succession of ages, and we have our parts to play. In the sudden stillness, again, sorry, there's one other thing. The kind of from this point onwards, I suppose, Paul's very Oedipal. But the other thing I kind of mentioned is it often reminds me on Tom Stoppard's Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead. It could almost be interesting to have a point in this story where Paul realizes that he's a character in a book, if you see what I mean. It's just a little bit of a fun thought experiment, but I think that play in particular is very interesting. But it's the point where we're talking about the character flipping the coin over and over again, never getting anything but heads. The conclusion that it comes to is we're not real, we're characters in a player story. So in the sudden stillness, Paul heard one of the wounded being led past him. It was terrible, the man groaned, a great fury of fire. None of these men shall be taken into the desert, Paul said. You hear me still? I hear you, my lord. So the brief thing that he said previously there, we live by Atreides law now still, not I or us. We, and I am not blind. The Fremen law that the blind should be abandoned in the desert applies only to the blind. All of these people are blind too, but he's going to make an exemption. It's not by Fremen law, it's by Atreides law that we live now. None of these men shall be taken into the desert. It's considering the nature of siege life. I think it's a ridiculously stupid thing for the Fremen to do. That, the blind could live in a siege; they could have a role within that society. They just don't need, there are factories within sieges. There are, they would need educators, storytellers, even, um, and in particularly with, I suppose, the Atreides myth being hugely a part of the Homeric epics, especially the Iliad. I always kind of think it like interesting what's done to the blind in this. As I suppose, I don't know if anybody does know this, but Homer, the author and composer, if you like, of the Iliad and the Odyssey, was blind and illiterate. Um, and the Iliad and the Odyssey are very much part of an oral tradition that was scribbled down later. Yeah, Homerosis, I think, is a old Greek word for slave, I believe. The other thing, I suppose, I find always fascinating is the both Homer and Aesop as well were slaves, and their works are huge parts of what we would call Western canon literature. I feel like they're incredibly important. Aesop's Fables is a book that I would read every year, without fail. I've got a lovely copy of it. It's not a complete one, and I've been hunting for a really good copy of Aesop's Fables for years. The one that I have is the original Penguin Classics, which isn't the complete one, but at least all the characters are Greek, if you like. The gods are Greek, not Roman. And I think it's a problem to do with translations from French versions, etc. But if you've got a copy of Aesop's Fables where you're looking at Jupiter instead of Zeus, then I'm not happy about that at all. I don't like that. And I've been trying, every time I find a lovely copy of Aesop's Fables, the first thing I have to do is have a look. What are the names of the gods in it? And if I see Jupiter instead of Zeus, I put it back. And unfortunately, I have yet to find a really good copy. Mine's very shabby these days, through so much reading. None of these men shall be taken into the desert, Paul said. You hear me still? I hear you, my lord. And then Paul, hearing the awe grow in Stilgar's voice, said, I will be at the command, Thopter. Take charge here. Yes, my lord. So Paul stepped around Stilgar, and this is part of the Atreides myth, if you like, in action. And part of the Atreides bravura as well, I think. And also Paul sort of following his role, if you like, in what's being laid out for him in his vision. So Paul stepped around Stilgar, strode down the street. His vision told him every movement, every irregularity beneath his feet, every face he encountered. He gave orders as he moved, pointing to men of his personal entourage. Hey. Sorry, I had a Zaphod Beeblebrox moment there. Hey, how are you? How's it going? We'll get you out, this kind of thing. He gave orders as he moved, pointing to men of his personal entourage, calling out names, summoning to himself the ones who represented the intimate apparatus of government. He could feel the terror grow behind him, the fearful whispers. His eyes. But he looked right at you, called you by your name. And again, I think that's part of the Atreides bravura, and also fitting into whatever he is, the role that is presented here for him by his vision memory. At the command Thopter, he deactivated his personal shield, reached into the machine and took the microphone from the hand of a startled communications officer, issued a swift string of orders, thrust the microphone back into the officer's hand. Turning, Paul summoned the weapon specialist, one of the eager and brilliant new breed who remembered siege life only dimly. And I think that's interesting, the way that this weapon specialist is described. Obviously a Fremen, who hasn't had too much of their life spent in the siege, if you see what I mean. But the description and the new breed, if you like, eager and brilliant. And the kind of suggestion that better, almost better, does that make sense? So this is what they used, a stone burner, Paul said. After the briefest of pause, the man said, So I was told, sire. You know what that means, of course. and this is the weapons specialist here, the fuel could only have been atomic. Paul nodded, thinking of how this man's mind must be racing. Atomics. The Great Convention prohibited such weapons. No, it doesn't. I've written here, no. The Great Convention prevents them. And this is the fine point of the law, if you like, within imperial law in Dune, is that Paul gets away with it because he uses it against a natural structure. The shield wall that surrounds Arrakeen isn't a shield in that sense, it's a natural mountain formation. And that's what Paul uses the atomics against, not people. As far as I understand, the Great Convention prohibits such weapons being used against people, and of course, all the houses, if you like, the of the Landsraad seem to have their own stash of nuclear weapons, a kind of mutual deterrent kind of thing. So atomics, the Great Convention prohibited such weapons. So this one has been used against people, and therefore is in defiance of the Great Convention. But it certainly doesn't prohibit such weapons. Discovery of the perpetrator would bring down the combined retributive assault of the great houses. And again, that's kind of to do within the, I suppose, the house of the Atreides myth, if you want to call it that, the marriage of Helen and the agreement of the Greek kings to bring down retributive assault, if you like, upon anybody who happens to kidnap her, which is kind of what happens with the Trojan War. Old feuds would be forgotten, discarded in the face of this threat and the ancient fears that arised. Now, I had a wee quick nosy about this. Atomic fuel, it's for the stone burner. And I had a wee nosy into this stuff, and I found, and I'm no physicist, by the way, folks. I'm a different kind of scientist, but I was having a look, wondering what this is. So options that I came up with were uranium-233, uranium-235, uranium-239, or plutonium-238. And then I was also having a look at different types of nuclear fuel. And I ended up sitting reading through the Wikipedia article on it. It was fascinating. I mean, all sorts of things there. This could be tritium, deuterium, etc. But what was really interesting, just for a bit of fun, I wonder, can I go back to this, see if it's nuclear fuel? Is that the stump? Nuclear fuel. Yeah, it's a fascinating nuclear fuel on Wikipedia is a lengthy thing, and there's all sorts of stuff here about different types of fuel. There's oxide fuels, uranium dioxide, this kind of stuff, liquid fuels, non-oxide ceramic fuels, blah blah blah. Now, let me see if I can get to fusion power and fuels. Now, let me see. Am I on the right stub here? First generation. It was to do with tritium and deuterium. H3 as well as helium-3. Now, it was just something it was to do with H4. If I can find this, and I just here we go. Is that it? Second generation fusion fuels. Third generation. Bear with me a wee second, folks. No, I'm not seeing it here. I'll not waste your time too much. It was go to a separate stub here. Fusion fuel. Is this it? Here we go. Fuel considered for fusion power have all been light elements like the isotopes of hydrogen, which are protium, deuterium, and tritium. The deuterium and helium-3 reaction requires helium-3, an isotope of helium so scarce on Earth that it would have to be mined extraterrestrially or produced by other nuclear reactions. That's the plot of Moon, isn't it? Let me just see here. It was something to do with H4 having essentially having its own kind of three-body problem. which I found kind of interesting. No, I can't figure out. It's quite a lot of stuff here. I can't figure out where it was. But it was kind of interesting. Let's see. Here we go. Helium-4. Let's have a look if this is it. Helium-4 is a stable isotope of the element helium. It is by far the most abundant of the two naturally occurring isotopes of helium, making up about 99.99986% of the helium on Earth. Its nucleus is identical to an alpha particle and consists of 2 protons and 2 neutrons. Let's see, alpha decay, blah, blah, blah. Well, it's also produced by nuclear fusion. Stars, most helium-4 in the Sun and in the universe is thought to have been produced by the Big Bang, as is referred to as primordial helium. Let me see if I can find this. Strange behavior, blah, 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 blah. No, I'm really not seeing it, actually, to be honest, but it was... here we go, I found it. The helium-4 atom. Right, the helium atom is this. This is what I thought was fascinating. And I just didn't have enough time to read through all of this, but I would love to sit and read this stuff at some point. The helium atom is the second simplest atom. Hydrogen is the simplest, but the extra electron introduces a third body. So its wave equation becomes a 3-body problem, which has no analytical solution. However, numerical approximations of the equations of quantum mechanics have given a good estimate of the key atomic properties of helium-4, such as its size and ionization energy. The size of the 4He nucleus has long been known magnitude of that's I thought as well. In an experiment involving the use of exotic helium atoms where an atomic electron was replaced by a muon, the nucleus size has been estimated to be 1.67824 brackets 83 femtometers. I just thought that was interesting. Got a bit off on one there, folks. But for anybody who's got a scientific mind, interested in physics and quantum mechanics and that kind of stuff, that was it seemed really interesting. But just the fact that it's associated with the 3-body problem was something I thought was, wow, that's pretty cool. So there we go. Sorry about that. We just a wee quick chat about what possible fuel could be used for this stone burner. Paul says it cannot have been manufactured without leaving some traces. Paul said, you will assemble the proper equipment and search out the place where the stone burner was made. And I kind of wondered, what if it's made off planet? A weapons specialist says, at once, sire. With one last fearful glance, the man sped away. And the communications officer here now, my lord, the communications officer ventured from behind him. Your eyes! Paul turned, reached into the thopter, returned the command set to his personal band. Call Chani, he ordered. Tell her I am alive and well and will be with her soon. And Paul's thoughts are, now the forces gather, he thought. Paul thought, sorry. And he noted how strong was the smell of fear in the perspiration all around. So there we go. And we've hit the end of that. It's quite a short little chapter. And I think it's the pacing of it's really good. And of course, it results with Stilgar getting Bijaz away, Stilgar coming back to the rescue. The how would we put it? The superiority of Atreides law over Fremen law. The fact that these people are going to get eyes, and the reliance on that kind of thing. And as I pointed out to you folks, I just think it's the same sort of thing that we get within the Dune series. No mention whatsoever of poor Otheym or Dhuri, who are probably just part of the molten slag at the end of this street. And not so much as a consideration, if you like. And the fact that we get Otheym's house mentioned a few times and that it's been destroyed. But the the idea, I suppose, is that we're not really paying attention, or Frank's not really letting us think about it too much, perhaps. That the list of people who are dead in this chapter: Otheym, Dhuri, a whole bunch of Imperial guards, and a bunch of conspiracy members. And then we have an awful lot of blind people. And of course, the fact that Paul is blind but can see. And really, the state of what was it that was Cynthia saying, the interesting shift from Imperial troops to friends who are Paul's friends now. It does seem to be a bit of a personal entourage, doesn't it? So they're you know, but it's just in terms of that, the last bit, call Chani. Tell her, this kind of thing. Tell her I'm alive and well, and we'll be with her soon. And again, she's probably been back at the Atreides palace, worrying for Paul. He's gone off on this kind of secret mission into the night, this kind of thing, But there we go, folks. Another chapter done. The next one's going to be a much lengthier chapter, so I've got my work cut out for me this week. As much as I've found an almost impossible maths problem to solve, I got berated by my wife there because I worked at it for, I don't know, 5 or 6 hours the other day, and then when I went to sleep, the maths problem had imprinted in my head, basically. And I ended up trying to solve the damn thing in my sleep, and it drove me mad. It drove me up the wall. And I actually think it's a misprint in the question, which happens quite a lot in the exams over here. So before we finish up for tonight, folks, hang around. I'll maybe nip out quickly to the loo for a wee quick second here, but I'm going to read you some stuff from Greek mythology tonight, just to give you I think this is the time to do it, really, in terms of Oedipus, and how that we talk about how that myth is overlaid on Paul Atreides here. Of course, we have the Atreides myth, and several aspects of different characters from the Pelopid line are overlaid on Paul. His father, really not so much. I'd say that, Leto the First. I'd have a wee think about the characters, but probably just Atreus himself. Possibly Agamemnon as well, but would also have to include Agamemnon as an overlay on Paul as well. Most of the Atreides, I think, and again, that's because there's a kind of cyclical nature to that particular family. The gods hate if we read if we read some of the classical literature. The house that God hates is the Atreides. What's that from? That's from the Oresteia, isn't it? That's from Agamemnon, the play. My old memory's working away, not too bad there. So if you excuse me a wee quick second, I'm going to read you some stuff from Robert Graves's The Greek Myths, Apollodorus's library or Bible of Greek mythology, which would be the oldest extant version of these myths, and oldest extant Greek mythology. But actually, Sophocles' Theban plays are quite possibly a bit older, I think. Some people refer to Apollodorus as the pseudo-Apollodorus as well. There's a bit of debate about who he actually is. So excuse me a wee second, and I'll be right back. There we go. My printer went kaput a wee while back, and I have a very, very hard time reading stuff on screen. But wife managed to get me some stuff printed there. But I finally managed to get a print copy of Michael Moorcock's epic Pooh, which I'm hoping to do just a live chat about some night and have a wee bit of a talk about it, maybe analyze it a bit. And also, I don't know if anybody's interested in this, just to show you very quickly. I finally got as I said, my printer went kaput. For anybody who's into E&M banks, I've got a whole bunch of the Banksonians here, which I'm hoping to tear through. They're available online. There's 21 of them in all. He was quite Banks supported this quite well, so it's a very good little thing, insight into the culture. It was very handy at the time when it came out. So it's nice to get these things for the Sci-Fi Station, because we've got a big folder here full of the Banksonians. That's them all in there. Number 1 to number 21. Got them all now. Just tidy that up a wee bit. Yeah, just not very good at reading stuff on screens, I'm afraid. But something I wouldn't mind having a wee chat about a certain point, Moorcock's attitude towards Tolkien. And that kind of fantasy literature is the subject of the essay known as Epic Pooh, which I think you can find online if you have a wee look for it. Oh, goodness, my hand's throbbing. Yes, we've got the microphone on. So there we go, folks. We've chapter 18 done of this book. We've got 24 to go. Or not 24 to go, sorry. There's a total of 24 chapters, I believe. And then we have just a brief epilogue at the end. Interesting choice. I suppose you have a whole chunk of chapters within Dune, but to have a novel like this, run with the Atreides myth, run with the Oedipal myth, etc. The structure of the Iliad and the Odyssey is also 24 chapters. The structure of Virgil's Aeneid is only 12 because it was not really completed properly, But it's the kind of structure that's assigned to epics, if you like. So let's have a wee look. Just in terms of, I'm not going to sit and read you a whole bunch of stuff from Sophocles. Going into these plays, they're quite lengthy. And if anybody's never, let's have a wee look. There you go. This is my copy. There we are. The 3 Theban plays: Antigone, Oedipus the King, Oedipus at Colonus. Oedipus the King is really sort of, you could, depending on how you look at it, you can call it Oedipus Rex. Some people do. It would be Oedipus Tyrannus, because Oedipus is not a king in that sense. He's an usurper. Excuse my super sibilant whistling there. But let me see. I just had a wee scroll through and thought I'd try and pick out a couple of relevant things within this. And I don't know if we'll go super nuts with it here, but I'll tell you what, maybe keep that bit for. And again, it's to do with divinity. In fact, there's a fair bit here, but I suppose the descriptions of how you cast the dice, and how Oedipus bursts in, basically. I'll keep that for a wee bit, but let's just I'll go to Apollodorus first. I'll just give you the myth. And this is to do with Laius and Oedipus. Now, Laius succeeds to the throne after the death of Amphion in Greek mythology. And of course, this is Thebes we're talking about. This is Theban mythology in particular. And let me just see if I can very quickly. And I said, if anybody's got any questions about tonight's chapter or anything to do with all things Dune, etc., let me see if I can find the familial line. Is this the book that? No, hang on. Am I thinking on? I'm thinking on Graves, am I possibly? Oh no, here we go. Let's see. Decanids, the Aetolian line. Agnerid, Cadmos. It's the Agnerid line in Europe and Crete. Bear with me, a whole bunch of family lines within the Agnerid line with descendants of Cadmus and Thebes. There we go. So Cadmus and Harmonia then have a whole bunch of kids. Agave, Polydorus, Ino, Semele, and Autonoe. Semele, through Zeus, gives birth to Dionysus. But in particular, then Polydorus and Nyctius give birth to Labdacus, who's the father of Laius. And Laius, of course, Laius is a bit of a dodgy geezer. He's the original husband of Jocasta, who has different names in Greek mythology, by the way. Sometimes she's known as Epicasta. And then, of course, they are the parents of Oedipus. And then with his mother, Oedipus is the father of Eteocles, Polynices, Antigone, and Ismene. And that is what we would call, I suppose, the Agnorid line, the descendants of Cadmus in Thebes. Now, there are other descendants of Agenor and the descendants of Europa in Crete. But essentially, the children of Agenor and Telephasia are Europa, Cadmus, Phoenix, and Cilix. So that's just the kind of the family line. But this is from one of my favorite writers, Apollodorus, anyway. So this is Laius and Oedipus, and this is just to give you a real sense of what the story is about and why I suppose the Freudian stuff is a load of hoo-ha. After the death of Amphion, Laius took over the kingdom. He married the daughter of Menoikeus, who some call Jocasta, others Epicasta. An oracle from the gods had warned him not to have a child, for if he did, the son who would be born to him would become his father's murderer. But while he was drunk with wine, he had intercourse with his wife. When the child was born, he pierced its ankles with buckle pins and passed it to a herdsman for exposure. But when he exposed it on Mount Cithaeron, the herdsman of Polybus, king of Corinth, discovered the baby and brought it to the king's wife, Periboia. She took him and passed her own son. After she had healed his ankles, she called him Oedipus, giving him the name because of his. When the boy grew up and surpassed of his age and strength, they grew jealous and poured scorn on him for being a superstitious child. He questioned Periboia, but could not learn nothing from her. So he went to Delphi and asked who his true parents were. The god told him not to return to his native land, for if he did, he would murder his father and sleep with his mother. Hearing this and believing that he was really born from those who were said to be his parents, he kept away from Corinth. So that's the crux of, I suppose, the Oedipus complex, is that Oedipus has some kind of subconscious desire to kill his father and sleep with his mother. It's nothing. There's nothing subconscious about it. It's an overt statement to him that if he goes home, he'll do this. And so Oedipus's decision is to get as far away from his parents as possible. It's just that the problem is that the people he believes are his parents are not, and that's where the level, I suppose, the trickery of the oracle and the nature of the tragedy comes from. So Oedipus is quite an admirable character in many ways. Doesn't have a great death. Let's see. Hearing this and believing that he was really born from those who were said to be his parents, he kept away from Corinth. But as he was traveling through Phocis in his chariot, he came across Laius, also driving in a chariot on a certain narrow track. And when Polyphontes, the herald of Laius, told him to make way and killed one of his horses because he refused to obey or was slow to do so, Oedipus was enraged and killed both Polyphontes and Laius, and he drove on to Thebes. Laius was buried by Damasistratus, king of Plataea, and Creon, son of Menoikeus, succeeded to the throne during his reign. A disaster of no small proportion struck Thebes. For Hera sent the Sphinx. The mother of the Sphinx was Echidna and her father Typhon, and she had the face of a woman, the chest, feet, and tail of a lion, and the wings of a bird. She had learned a riddle from the Muses, and seated on Mount Phaeacion, she posed it to the Thebans. The riddle ran as follows: what is it that has a single voice and has 4 feet, and then 2 feet, and then 3 feet? Now the Thebans possessed an oracle telling them that they would be freed from the Sphinx when they solved her riddle. So they gathered together repeatedly to seek the solution, but when they failed to discover it, the Sphinx would carry one of them off and devour him. When many had died in this way, including ultimately Creon's son Haemon, Creon proclaimed that he would give both the kingdom and the widow of Laius to the man who could solve the riddle. When Oedipus heard of this, he supplied the answer, saying that the riddle of the Sphinx referred to a man, for he is 4-footed as a baby when he crawls on all fours, 2-footed as an adult, and takes on a third limb in old age in the form of a stick. So the Sphinx hurled herself from the Acropolis, and Oedipus took over the kingdom, and also, without realizing it, married his mother. He had 2 sons by her, Polynices and Eteocles, and 2 daughters, Ismene and Antigone. Excuse me. There are some who say, however, that these children were born to him by Eurygeneia, daughter of Hyperphas. Afterwards, then, when what was unknown was revealed, Jocasta hanged herself in a noose, and Oedipus put out his eyes and was driven from Thebes, cursing his sons, who watched him being expelled from the city without coming to his aid. Arriving with Antigone at Colonus in Attica, where the sanctuary of Eumenides lies, excuse me, the Eumenides being the kindly ones, he sat down there as a suppliant and received a friendly reception from Theseus and died not long afterwards. And thus begin the Theban Wars, and the 7 against Thebes and all of this kind of stuff. And of course the what we call the Epigonia and the second Theban War. Kind of your original Magnificent Seven, if you like. There you are, as the 7 against Thebes. And these are all, these are topics of Greek plays. The Antigone is a cracking play. My guitar's called Antigone. I named it after her. And that's pretty much, that's Apollodorus's. Here, let me quickly check, just to check his notes. The notes on this, because we have a few here, just to see some. But up, that's page 105. Let me just check. Oh, it's just just in relation to some of the stuff being in Homer, I suppose. It says others. So Jocasta, others calling her Epicasta, as in the Odyssey, chapter 11, line 271, when Odysseus meets her in Hades, but Jocasta is general in later writers, and of course people will add a J to that and call her Jocasta, if you like. Now, just in terms of Oedipus, that he was called Oedipus. The name Oedipus is derived from oedium, which means to swell, and pus, a foot, which is a valid etymology, but the familiar Latinized form of his name is used in the translation. For further details on the following, see Apollonius' main sources, Sophocles, Oedipus the king, and Oedipus at Colonus. And the supposititious child, as one who was not the child of his supposed parents, but is passed off as being their child. That's what that term means. So there we go. That's Apollodorus on Laius and Oedipus. Laius turns up elsewhere within the myth of the Atreides, particularly as the kidnapper of, is it Chrysippus, I believe. So the Atreides go after him. So Laius is probably the character who's the model for the Baron. There we go. I'll just catch up with your comments. That was a good bit of reading there, wasn't it? Cynthia saying Skytail is Lickna insists that Otheym wants both Paul and Chani to come to his house. Do you think Otheym is part of the conspiracy or duped by them? I think he's insinuated himself. I think in the last chapter we kind of get this sense that I think possibly he was brought into it, but remained loyal. But he to Paul, I think. So I don't think he was part of the conspiracy. I think he was working against them, but I think he was acting like a spy, if you see what I mean. And it's possible that he was duped by them initially. There's Barbara Bilo saying, sorry, so late. Actually, happily surprised I could pop in for a bit. Delighted to have you, Babs. Barbara saying, "Evening, Doc, and how do you all?" So they saying, "Hi, Barbara." Yeah, it's lovely to have you here, Cynthia. We had a real short chapter with chapter 18 tonight, and so what I was saying I was doing tonight, just in addition, I thought it was the right time with Paul being blinded, was to have a wee quick look at the Oedipus myth, and just have a wee quick chat about that. So I really need precious fluids, folks. All that reading. So we've just had a wee read at. It's not too much about what we have on Oedipus, Laius and Oedipus and Apollodorus, and I've dug out the right books tonight, and so we'll have a little bit from Sophocles here, and let's have a wee look at. Going to have a wee quick read for you from Robert Graves here. Robert Graves's book is kind of depending on what copy you have. There we go. I'll show you. This is my working book of Robert Graves. This is the one I scribble all over. So the Greek Myths, volumes 1 and 2, are absolutely invaluable to anyone who wants to study classical mythology. I'm a great admirer of Graves, and Graves is kind of trying to do when he was about what Apollodorus basically did. So these books work really well together in terms of getting to know as much as you possibly can about the Greek myths. There are lots and lots of different sources for a lot of this stuff, but much of it comes from later writers, I suppose, Romans as well. And you can get to see, if you can kind of follow a timeline of when these were written, how myths subtly change and get altered by different individuals over the years. No, I'll just give you a wee quick blurb on. We'll get to Sophocles. We'll keep Sophocles for a wee minute. Now, the interesting thing about Robert Graves is if these are the Penguin classics, I think. Are they? No, they're not called Penguin classics, just Penguin. Robert Graves, The Greek Myths, Volume 1 and 2. It's one book, really. And the problem is, if you're going to read these books, in particular, I've got another really, really pretty edition of these, which is just for reading, and I wouldn't dare write on it. Is that you cannot read this one without this one, unfortunately, because it is one book, but it's the terms of referencing and how to find stuff is all at the back of volume 2, the actual index in these copies. There you go. But there isn't one in volume 1. So it's one work, really. And as much as that's the way it's presented often as the 2 volumes of it, it really should be one book. And if you're getting this book to work from, if you like, in any sense or form, or want to reference, look up specific myths, you cannot work with book 1 on its own. To get everything in these, and there's a lot in these, you absolutely need the index that's in volume 2. And particularly, I think somebody was saying that these are available on audiobook somewhere, possibly on YouTube. There's a wealth of information in the footnotes and references, and they're between these books, I suppose, between Apollodorus and the 2 volumes of Graves, it'll lead you to so many other source material. Really expand on your reading and stuff, this kind of thing. So let's just Oedipus would be at actually the beginning of volume 2, and we'll go through this. Let's see, and then we'll have a wee quick chat. This will be a bit more lengthy, and then it'll go into the 7 against Thebes, but we can have a chat about that some other time if you like. That's really to do with the children of Oedipus. So here we go, and just for an example, within our let me just open the genealogical here. The great thing about the copy, the one that I have of the Apollodorus, and I must get a different version of this actually. This is getting pretty battered. Is that it has a whole bunch of genealogies. Let's see, of the major Greek families. Genealogical tables. Let's see. I just wanted to check something here very quickly. So it's all sorts, Trojan royal line, the Asapids, the Agonorids, and there we go. So Laius. No, that's fine. It's just wanted to check, is that the same father for Laius? Oedipus's grandfather being Labdacus. So here we go, folks. And if anybody, again, I'll read through this, and if you've got any wee questions or anything like that, fire away, and I'll catch up with the comments in a wee minute or two. So this is section 105 from Robert Graves' The Greek Myths, Volume 2, and it is literally the first story within Volume 2. So Laius, son of Labdacus, married Jocasta and ruled over Thebes. Grieved by his prolonged childlessness, he secretly consulted the Delphic oracle, which informed him that this seeming misfortune was a blessing, because any child born to Jocasta would become his murderer. He therefore put Jocasta away, though without offering any reason for his decision, which caused her such vexation that, having made him drunk, she inveigled him into her arms again as soon as night fell. When 9 months later Jocasta was brought to bed of a son, Laius snatched him from the nurse's arms, pierced his feet with a nail, and binding them together, exposed him on Mount Kithaeron. Yet the fates had ruled that this boy should reach a green old age. A Corinthian shepherd found him, named him Oedipus because his feet were deformed by the nail wound, and brought him to Corinth, where King Polybus was reigning at the time. According to another version of the story, Laius did not expose Oedipus on the mountain, but locked him in a chest, which was lowered into the sea from a ship. The chest drifted ashore at Sicyon, where Periboa, Polybus's queen, happened to be on the beach, supervising her royal laundry women. She picked up Oedipus, retired to a thicket, and pretended to have become overcome by the pangs of labour. Since the laundry women were too busy to notice what she was about, she deceived them all into thinking that he had only just been born. But Periboa told the truth to Polybus, who, also being childless, was pleased to rear Oedipus as his own. One day, taunted by a Corinthian youth, with not in the least resembling his supposed parents, Oedipus went to ask the Delphic oracle with disgust, "You will kill your father and marry your mother." Since Oedipus loved Polybus and Periboa, and shrank from bringing disaster upon them, he at once decided against returning to Corinth. But in the narrow defile between Delphi and Daulis, he happened to meet Laius, who ordered him roughly to step off the road and make way for his betters. Laius, it should be explained, was in a chariot and Oedipus on foot. Oedipus retorted that he acknowledged no betters except the gods and his own parents. "So much the worse for you," cried Laius, and ordered his charioteer Polyphontes to drive on. One of the wheels bruised Oedipus's foot, and, transported by rage, he killed Polyphontes with his spear. Then, flinging Laius on the road, entangled in the reins, and whipping up the team, he made them drag him to death. It was left to the king of Plataea to bury both corpses. Laius had been on his way to ask the oracle how he might rid Thebes of the Sphinx. This monster was a daughter of Typhon and Echidna, or some say of the dog Orthrus and the Chimera, and had flown to Thebes from the uttermost part of Ethiopia. She was easily recognized by her woman's head, lion's body, serpent's tail, and eagle's wings. Hera had recently sent the Sphinx to punish Thebes for Laius's abduction of the boy Chrysippus from Pisa, and settling on Mount Ficcium, close to the city, she now asked every Theban wayfarer a riddle taught her by the three muses. That's interesting. Very quickly, there are originally three muses, and then they become 9. Trinity of Trinities, if you like. Yeah, that's quite, yeah. Oh, I love Graves. He's got a life for detail here. Excuse me a wee second. Right. Okay, folks, sorry. Needed fluids there. Okay. Hera had recently sent the Sphinx to punish Thebes for Laius's abduction of the boy Chrysippus from Pisa, and settling on Mount Ficcium, close to the city, she now asked every Theban wayfarer a riddle taught her by the three muses. What being, with only one voice, has sometimes 2 feet, sometimes 3, sometimes 4, and is weakest when it has the most? Those who could not solve the riddle, she throttled and devoured on the spot, among which unfortunates was Jocasta's nephew Haemon, whom the Sphinx made Hymen, or bloody indeed. Oedipus approaching Thebes fresh from the murder of Laius guessed the answer, man, he replied, because he crawls on all fours as an infant, stands firmly on his 2 feet in his youth, and leans upon a staff in his old age. The mortified Sphinx leaped from Mount Ficcium and dashed herself to pieces in the valley below. At this the grateful Thebans acclaimed Oedipus king, and he married Jocasta, unaware that she was his mother. Plague then descended upon Thebes, and the Delphic oracle, when consulted once more, replied, expel the murderer of Laius. Oedipus, not knowing whom he had met in the defile, pronounced a curse on Laius's murderer and sentenced him to exile. Blind Tiresias, the most renowned seer in Greece at this time, now demanded an audience with Oedipus. Some say that Otheym, who had blinded him for having inadvertently seen her bathing, was moved by his mother's plea, and taking the serpent Erycthonius from her aegis, gave the order, cleanse Tiresias' ears with your tongue, that he may understand the language of prophetic birds. That's ornithomancy. Others say that once on Mount Selene, Tiresias had seen 2 serpents in the act of coupling. When both attacked him, he struck at them with his staff, killing the female. Immediately he was turned into a woman and became a celebrated harlot. But 7 years later, he happened to see the same sight again at the same spot, and this time regained his manhood by killing the male serpent. Still others say that when Aphrodite and the 3 charities, Pasithea, Calais, and Euryphosine, that's it, disputed as to which of the 4 was most beautiful, Tiresias awarded Calais the prize, whereupon Aphrodite turned him into an old woman. But Calais took him with her to Crete and presented him with a lovely head of hair. Some days later, Hera began reproaching Zeus for his numerous infidelities. He defended them by arguing that at any rate, when he did share her couch, she had the more enjoyable time by far. Women, of course, derive infinitely greater pleasure from the sexual act than men, he blustered. What nonsense, cried Hera. The exact contrary is the case, and well you know it. Tiresias was summoned to settle the dispute from his personal experience and answered, if the parts of love pleasure be counted as 10, thrice 3 go to women, 1 only to men. Hera was so exasperated by Zeus's triumphant grin that she blinded Tiresias, but Zeus compensated him with inward sight, and a life extended to 7 generations. Tiresias now appeared at Oedipus's court, leaning on the cornel wood staff given him by Athene, and revealed to Oedipus the will of the gods, that the plague would cease only if a sown man died for the sake of the city. Jocasta's father Meniochus, one of those who had risen out of the earth when Cadmus sowed the serpent's teeth, at once leaped from the walls, and all Thebes praised his civic devotion. Tiresias then announced further, Meniochus did well, and the plague will now cease. Yet the gods had another of the sown men in mind, one of the 3rd generation, for he has killed his father and married his mother. Know, Queen Jocasta, that it is your husband, Oedipus. At first none would believe Tiresias, but his words were soon confirmed by a letter from Periboea at Corinth. She wrote that the sudden death of King Polybus now allowed her to reveal the circumstances of Oedipus's adoption, and this she did in damning detail. Jocasta then hanged herself for shame and grief, while Oedipus blinded himself with a pin taken from her garments. Some say that although tormented by the Erinyes, who accused him of having brought about his mother's death, Oedipus continued to reign over Thebes for a while, until he fell gloriously in battle. According to others, however, Jocasta's brother Creon expelled him, but not before he had cursed Eteocles and Polynices, who were at once his sons and his brothers, when they insolently sent him the inferior portion of the sacrificial beast, namely haunch, instead of the royal shoulder. They therefore watched dry-eyed as he left the city, which he delivered from the Sphinx's power. After wandering for many years through country after country, guided by his faithful daughter Antigone, Oedipus finally came to Colonus in Attica, where the Erinyes, who have a grove there, hounded him to death, and Theseus buried his body in the precinct of the solemn ones at Athens, lamenting by Antigone's side. So a whole bunch of just Apollodorus's references here, Robert Graves's references here, and for his research are that this stuff is mostly taken from Apollodorus, but also we have from Hegnius. Yeah, and Sophocles pretty much, and Homer. And there's a whole bunch of notes here actually as well, which is really where Graves's work really comes into its own, I suppose. I'll not go into too much of it, I suppose. The death of Laius is very similar to, if you look at the death within, if you go all the way back to the curse of the house of the Pelopid curse, if you like. As much as a lot of people like to call it the curse of the house of Atreides, that's not the family line. They're Pelopids. Is very similar. And again, the ritualistic kind of death of involving a chariot and chariot wheels, this kind of stuff, There's a little bit here actually, just in terms of the alternative story of we talk about heroes that they're either exposed on a hill. There's another version where they're put into some kind of basket or chest that's set out to sea, if you like, and it's a common thing. Let me just read this wee bit. Yeah, I'll read you the first wee note here. The story of Laius, Eucasta, and Oedipus has been deduced from a set of sacred icons by a deliberate perversion of their meaning. A myth which could explain Labdacus's name, which means help with torches, has been lost, but it may refer to the torchlight arrival of the divine child carried by cattlemen or shepherds at the New Year ceremony and acclaimed as a son of the goddess Brimo, which just means raging. This Ulysses, or Advent, was also the most important incident in the Ulyssean mysteries, and perhaps also the Isthmian, which would explain the myth of Oedipus's arrival at the court of Corinth. Shepherds fostered or paid homage to many other legendary or semi-legendary infant princes, such as Hippothous, Peleus, Amphion, Aegisthus, Moses, Romulus, and Cyrus, who were all either exposed on a mountain or else consigned to the waves in an ark, or both. Moses was found by Pharaoh's daughter when she went down to the water with her women. It is possible that Oedipus's swollen foot was originally Oedipus, which means son of the swelling sea, which is the meaning of the name given to the corresponding Welsh hero Dylan, and that the piercing of Oedipus's feet with a nail belongs to the end, not to the beginning of his story, as in the myth of Talus. There we go. Laius's murder is a record of the Sora king's ritual death at the hands of his successor, thrown from a chariot and dragged by the horses. His abduction of Chrysippus probably refers to the sacrifice of a surrogate when the first year of his reign ended. We have a wee chat about that in the videos that I did on the Pelopids. It's pretty interesting stuff. Excuse me. I'd happily sit here and read you this whole book, to be honest with you. It's fascinating. This story then moves on into the Seven Against Thieves, etc. But just finally then, and I'm not going to sit and read you a whole bunch of plays, but if we really want a good insight into this is Sophocles' The Theban plays. Antigone, Oedipus the king, Oedipus Colonus. And yeah, they're excellent. Just to give you a wee bit of biography on Sophocles. Sophocles is born at Colonus, which is just outside of Athens, in 496 BC, and he lived to 90 years of age. His long life spanned the rise and decline of the Athenian Empire. He was a friend of Pericles, and though not an active politician, he had several public offices, both military and civil. The leader of a literary circle and friend of Herodotus, Sophocles was interested in poetic theory as well as practice, and he wrote a prose treatise on the chorus. He seems to have been content to spend all his life at Athens and is said to have refused several invitations to royal courts. Sophocles first won a prize for tragic drama in 468, defeating the veteran Aeschylus. He wrote over 100 plays for the Athenian theatre and is said to have won the first prize at the City of Dionysia 18 times. Only 7 of his tragedies are now extant. Fragments of the others' plays remain, showing that he drew on a wide range of themes. He also introduced the innovation of a third actor in his tragedies. He died in the year 406, 405 BC. When we're referring to the classical world, the dates that are given there, the last date's more likely that their year kind of began in the middle of the year, if that makes sense. So when we tend to refer to a particular year, I would say that he died in 406/5, if you see what I mean. That there's a dual nature to their years, which doesn't work in too well with translating them into BC and AD, this kind of thing. But generally, when we refer to stuff within particularly the Athenian world, that's BC, if you like, that we're often referring to a year would be 2 years, if you like. That if he was born in 496, it could be, we would call that year 496, 495, if that makes sense. Of course, it could be 497, 496. But there you go. So that's a little bit about Sophocles. Let me see. Just now, I'd end up once again. I opened this up and bookmarked a couple of stuff, and then I could just go on for ages. But let me see if I can read you this little bit here. Just from Sophocles. This is from Oedipus the King. And we'll just go from I suppose this bit here. This is the messenger basically talking here. The queen is dead. Leader says, poor lady, how? By her own hand, but you're spared the worst you never had to watch. I saw it all, and with all the memory that's in me, you will learn with what that poor woman suffered. Once she'd broken in through the gates, dashing past us, frantic, whipped to fury, ripping her hair out with both hands. Straight to her rooms she rushed, flinging herself across the bridal bed, doors slamming behind her. Dead so long, remembering how she bore his child up to destroy him, leaving its mother to moving creatures with the very son she'd born. Oh, how she wept, mourning the marriage bed where she let loose that double brood, monsters, husband by her husband, children by her child. And then, by how she died is more than I can say. Suddenly Oedipus burst in, screaming. He stunned us so we couldn't watch her agony to the end. Our eyes were fixed on him, circling like a maddened beast, stalking here, there, crying out to us. Give him a sword. His wife, no wife, his mother. Where can he find the mother earth that cropped 2 crops at once, himself and all his children? He was raging, one of the dark powers pointing the way, none of us mortals crowding around him. No, with a great shattering cry, someone, something leading him on, he hurled at the twin doors and bending the bolts back out of their sockets, crashed through the chamber. Excuse me. And there we saw the woman hanging by the neck, cradled high in a woven noose, spinning, swinging back and forth. And when he saw her giving a low, wrenching sob that broke our hearts, slipping the halter from her throat, he eased her down in a slow embrace. He laid her down. Poor thing. Then, what came next? What horror we beheld. He rips off her brooches, the long gold pins holding her robes, and lifting them high, looking straight up into the points, he digs them down the sockets of his eyes, crying, You'll see no more the pain I suffered, all the pain I caused. Too long you looked on the ones you never should have seen, blind to the ones you longed to see, to know. Blind from this hour on, blind in the darkness, blind. His voice like a dirge, rising over and over, raising the pins, raking them down his eyes, and at each stroke blood spurts from the roots, splashing his beard, a swirl of it, nerves and clots, black hail of blood pulsing, gushing down. These are the griefs that burst upon them both, coupling man and woman. The joy they had so lately, their fortune of their old ancestral house, was deep joy indeed. Now in this one day, wailing, madness and doom, death, disgrace, all the griefs in the world that you can name, all are theirs forever. Oh, poor man, the misery. Has he any rest from pain now? And we hear this is a stage direction, a voice within in torment. The messenger continues. He's shouting, "Loose the bolts! Someone, show me to all of Thebes. My father's murderer, my mother's. No, I can't repeat it. It's unholy. Now he'll tear himself from his native earth, not linger. Curse the house with his own curse. But he needs strength and a guide to lead him on. This is sickness more than he can bear." The palace doors open. "Look, he'll show you himself. The great doors are opening. You're about to see a sight, a horror even his mortal enemy would pity." And so we have enter Oedipus, blinded, led by a boy. He stands at the palace steps as if surveying his people once again. And this is the chorus speaking here. Oh, the terror, the suffering for all the world to see, the worst terror that ever met my eyes. What madness swept over you? What God, what dark power leapt beyond all bounds, beyond belief, to crush your wretched life? God forsaken, cursed by the gods. I pity you, but I can't bear to look. I've so much to ask, so much to learn, so much fascinates my eyes, but you, I shudder at the sight. And this is Oedipus talking now. Oh, oh, the agony. I am agony. Where am I going? Where on earth? Where does all this agony hurl me? Where's my voice? Winging, swept away on a dark tide, my destiny, my dark power, what a leap you made. The chorus says, to the depths of terror, too dark to hear, to see. And this is Oedipus again. Dark horror of darkness, my darkness, drowning, swirling around me, crashing wave on wave, unspeakable, irresistible headwind, fatal harbour. Oh, again the misery, all at once, over and over, the stabbing daggers, stab of memory, raking me insane. The chorus sings, no wonder you suffer twice over the pain of your wounds, the lasting grief of pain. And Oedipus, dear friend, still here, standing by me, still with a care for me, the blind man, such compassion, loyal to the last. Oh, it's you, I know you're here. Dark as it is, I know you anywhere. Your voice, it's yours, clearly yours. And the chorus sings, dreadful what you've done. How could you bear it gouging out your eyes? What superhuman power drove you on? And this is the response. I'll finish up with this wee bit here, otherwise I'll end up reading the whole play. Apollo, friends, Apollo. He ordained my agonies these, my pains on pains, but the hand that struck my eyes was mine alone, no one else. I did it all myself. What good were eyes to me? Nothing I could see could bring me joy. No, no, exactly as you say. What can I ever see? What love, what call of the heart can touch my ears with joy? Nothing, friends. Take me away, far, far from Thebes, quickly. Cast me away, my friends. This great murderous ruin, this man cursed to heaven, the man the deathless gods hate most of all. Pitiful you suffer so, you understand so much. I wish you had never known. And then, die, whoever he was that day in the wilds, who cut my ankles free of the ruthless pins. He pulled me clear of death. He saved my life. For this kindness, curse him, kill him. If I died then, I'd never have dragged myself, my loved ones, through such hell. Oh, if only, would to God, says the chorus, I've never had come to this, my father's murderer, never been branded, mother's husband, all men see me now. Now, loathed by the gods, son of the mother I defiled, coupling in my father's bed, spawning lives in the loins that spawned my wretched life. What grief can crown this grief? It's mine alone, my destiny. I am Oedipus. I think that'll do. There you go, folks. Real hardcore stuff. Absolutely brilliant. I've seen a couple of Greek plays in the modern world, and they're fantastic. It's pretty heavy, isn't it? It's absolutely brilliant, and that's a play that's pretty much nearly 2,500 years old. And if you ever, any of you ever get it, I know it's maybe not on everybody's kind of radar, this kind of thing, but these plays are performed a fair bit here and there. And if you ever get a chance to go see some Sophocles, some Aeschylus, some Euripides, Aristophanes, giggle, any of this stuff, it's well worth it. And especially if you've got a theatre company who's taken the time to set this up. I was reading kind of how Sophocles would present Oedipus on stage, and it would be with two red ribbons pouring down, attached at the eyes to represent the blindness and the blood. It's a great speech, isn't it? I am Oedipus at the end. And of course, it also reflects heavily what we have in Aeschylus's Agamemnon. The house that the gods hate is the house of Atreides. So there you go. I hope you didn't mind. But as much as I go on talking about these things sometimes, and there's a lot of misconceptions about Greek myths out there, I thought I'd read you the actual stuff tonight because we had quite a short chapter, So there we go. Carlos Crescelia saying Greeks had a weird obsession with incest and bestiality. And since they said thanks for the reading, haven't read it in many years. Yeah, it's been a wee while for me too. And Sophocles is not on the A level reading list in the UK. Sadly, this stuff isn't done, but what we have it's called Burial at Thebes, which would be Seamus Heaney's poetic translation of the Antigone, which is pretty good. Heaney's translation stuff is very, very good. He's got a version of, he's well into this part of the world. I suppose he's our great Northern Irish poet, who sadly, he is the poet of Northern Ireland, really, and a lot of his stuff, particularly on the north, if you like, is very, very interesting. He's always had this kind of real interest. The north cover a lot of stuff, Vikings and bog bodies and things like that. And this kind of idea of ritual sacrifice that you see, I suppose, that Graves, looks at a lot as well. The kind of idea of the Sun King and stuff like this. And it's really fascinating. But I'm absolutely delighted to read it because I don't get to do this stuff very often. But the only thing that comes close on the syllabuses here would be The Burial at Thebes by Seamus Heaney, which is his translation of Antigone. But it's powerful stuff, isn't it? And I hope I didn't drive you all too mad. That's just a small section from Oedipus the King. And been a wee while since I read them. The last time I probably read them was probably when I was doing my PhD, looking into Oedipus and stuff like that. But that's our overlay on Paul Atreides at the minute. And Oedipus, in fact, some of the notes, if anybody, I didn't want to go overboard on this stuff tonight. I would actually happily sit and read them to you, but I think it would maybe be a bit too much. Not for me, but maybe for you guys. I don't know. It's a fair bit of reading there. But Graves' notes on this stuff are superb. In fact, I love Graves' notes on just about all of the Greek myths that they're. If you read these stories, each story is followed by a whole set of footnotes and his work on it, and they're fascinating. I'll give you just this one on the Sphinx, by the way, because the way I was kind of linking it, as much as Herbert's quite careful about what he does, I suppose. I think Bijaz, I think, is the Sphinx, if you like. He speaks in riddles. There's as I said, there's aspects of these stories that not everything's there, but certain things are very, very obvious, I think. And I absolutely think that Paul, I'm certain of it. I think I proved it over in the PhD videos that the Lord Raglan's ritualistic steps that the hero goes through, the archetype, if you want to call it that, the ruling type character is Oedipus, and only Oedipus, in terms of what a hero goes through, only Oedipus scores 22 out of 22 on those steps. Paul Atreides covers 19 of them, I think. And I think, as I said, we have the Atreides myth. We have a bunch of different characters that, that you could argue. I think that Paul Atreides is the ultimate chimera of heroes, if you like. He's the ultimate hybrid. There's so many of them, but as much as we talk about certain influences, I still see that the Greek myths as being at the core of the Dune series. I'll give you this wee quick one here on the Sphinx, because I've always thought the Sphinx was fascinating, and I love riddles. The anecdote of the Sphinx has evidently been. This is Graves' footnote on it from the story of Oedipus. The anecdote of the Sphinx has evidently been deduced from an icon showing the winged moon goddess of Thebes, whose composite body represents the two parts of the Theban year: lion for the waxing part, serpent for the waning part, and to whom the new king offers his devotions before marrying her priestess, the queen. It seems also that the riddle which the Sphinx learned from the Muses has been invented to explain a picture of an infant, a warrior, and an old man, all worshipping the triple goddess. Each pays his respect to a different person of the triad, but the Sphinx, overcome by Oedipus, killed herself, and so did her priestess Jocasta. Was Oedipus a 13th century invader of Thebes, as 13th century BC, who suppressed the old Minoan cult of the goddess and reformed the calendar? Under the old system, the new king, though a foreigner, had theoretically been a son of the old king whom he killed, or usurper, and whose widow he married, a custom that the patriarchal invaders misrepresented as parricide and incest. The Freudian theory that the Oedipus complex is an instinct. I'll read that again. The Freudian theory that the Oedipus complex is an instinct common to all men was suggested by this perverted anecdote, and while Plutarch records on Isis and Osiris 32 that the hippopotamuses murdered his sire and forced his dam, he would never have suggested that every man has a hippopotamus complex. How do you like that? I think that's great. If anybody's into reading Robert Graves at all, get into the foot. And it's the same with Apollodorus. You'll get variations. It was important to sort of read, if you like, Apollodorus and Graves to use tonight. But both of these, Apollodorus and Graves, kind of went about their works the same way. And certainly within Apollodorus's library, you get variations on the myths, which is great, And of course, we move into Roman writers and how the myths change stuff. But Graves' work's fascinating. I wish I had more of his books. If anybody, was it the TV series I, Claudius, is by Robert Graves, which is like absolute cracker. Very good, very good. One of my favorite scenes of all time is it Brian Blessed lining up all the Romans who've been shagging his daughter. It's absolutely hilarious, But yes, indeed, there we go. Greeks had a weird obsession with incest and bestiality. They've got lots of weird obsessions, if you like, Carlos. The wee joke that I always make is it's a classics joke, if you like, but the classical world is, you could argue, is the study of tits, willies, and bums. And it is just a joke, but it's also very true, in a funny kind of way. But you're very welcome, folks. I hope that didn't put you off this kind of stuff. I do like bringing this kind of stuff up, but I hope you didn't mind it too much. But yeah, if anybody does get the opportunity to go and check out any of these Greek plays, one of the ones that's tends to be on quite a lot is Lysistrata. I think is one of the great sex comedies, and it tends to be. I kind of noticed that not that I live in London anymore. In fact, when I did live in London, Lysistrata's a comedy by Aristophanes, and it's just looking at the cover. Have a wee look at it on Wikipedia. It's hilarious, absolutely hilarious. I love it. That's a play that's on quite a bit, But if you ever do get a chance to go and see a theatre company put on one of these, and I'm sure there's a few of these plays online, that have been filmed and are probably on YouTube. Who is this Diggus? This is my friend, Biggest Diggus. Dear, there's a joke that Jasper Carrot used to tell us. He says I used to. I think it's always important to reference somebody's jokes. I feel like, but he said I went to school with a guy called Richard Dick, and he says, "Poor chap, you should hear all the nicknames that they called him. They called him Rick Dick, Rich Dick, Double Dick, this kind of thing." The real punchline of the joke was that he married a girl called Henrietta, and I always thought that was very funny. There's quite a lot in the Monty Python and the Life of Brian. I think it's quite well observed. I think Mm. But yes, indeed, the Greek tragedies, real heavy. Particularly Sophocles. They're just reading that, but that's heavy stuff, isn't it? It's whoa, and it's very impressive. Just sort of that's basically what I was reading was a messenger who witnesses the death of Jocasta, and then the chorus basically responding, and then Oedipus and the chorus. Chorus is a major feature of a lot of Greek tragedy and Greek drama, really. Reading this stuff, just reading it there, it's I have no bother reading plays at all. I quite enjoy it, but I've read these a few times over the years. My memory's not good on it. Just having read it to you tonight, I'd happily sit down and read all 3 plays again. But as I said, the influence on me of this stuff of Sophocles is my guitars. I have 5 guitars here, but the main guitar that I would play on stage, main classical guitar, is called Antigone. My bass is called Stethano, after one of the Gorgons. Stethano means forceful in Greek, and my Gibson Nighthawk Special SP3, lovely guitar, is called Euryale, which is the other sister of Medusa, which means far ranging. So that this stuff, I don't know. I always thought guitars have a particular character, if you like. I called my classical guitar Antigone because it's my old faithful, if you like. It's and I'm kind of devoted to it. I've had a bit of a nightmare, actually. Went to restring my guitars this week, and Persephone's is one of my guitars as well, as a kind of a folk hybrid guitar, and all my bridge pegs snapped, and I had to go running down. Well, actually, I ordered some online, and none of them fitted. And then I went on a bit of an epic quest today on foot, way into Korean town, to the one remaining music shop that we have, and managed to buy some individual pegs for it. So I'm sitting ready to sort of give them a bit of love and care and attention with a bit of lemon oil, and clean them up, and then get them restrung. But yes, indeed, yeah, it's there we go. It's great stuff. But particularly if I always say that my students are running through The Winter's Tale at the minute with a student for A-level English, and the amount of the use of Greek mythology by Shakespeare within his metaphors, even his character names, and we have within the Winter's Tale, for example, we have an overlay of the myth of Pygmalion and Galatea. For example, there's all sorts of stuff in there. And the poor girl, actually, we've been doing The Winter's Tale exactly the way we've been doing this book club. Taking it, and every time we stop, I'm going, oh, there's a character called Hermione. Do you know who Hermione is from Greek mythology? On we go. This kind of thing, and kind of looking at it in relation to sort of pastoral stuff, if you like, idylls and things. And there's some quite horrific things that Shakespeare gets really, really badly wrong, but a lot of this is to do with oracles as well. Another name for a Winter's Tale, if you like, is an old wives' tale, that sort of thing. But the oracles in this, Apollo, etc. And Shakespeare has Delphi on an island. There you go. So, which it's not, of course, it's on the Greek mainland. But I'm always saying that if you have a good understanding, there's not too much to learn, to be honest with you, and the stories are so interesting and unusual and memorable, and you do get reiterations of certain things, which I have my own opinions on. which I think generally you can see a transition from Greek society away from human sacrifice, if you like, down towards ultimately the legal systems, democratic systems that are developed. It's interesting, but that would cover you pretty much. Igneous, maybe if you want to go into the Romans and stuff, but the purity of the myths, if you want that's great stuff. And if you read that thoroughly, you'd know pretty much everything there is to know about Greek mythology, I would say. So it's not something that would take up too much of your time, I think. But the Greek myths is an absolute. Graves's book is an absolute delight to read. I said I've scribbled all over this one. I do have another copy, but volumes 1 and 2, which are much nicer. And there you go. That's my copy. This is my other copies of the Greek myths here. You've got these two. That's Leda and the Swan on the cover. That swan is Zeus, by the way, in the shape of a swan. And again, beautiful books, with the maps. And this is just it's really nice. And this one comes with a number of oh goodness gracious, there we go. We've got volume 2, haven't we? Yes, look. What have I got? There he is. Let me see. The Oedipus and the Sphinx. Isn't that lovely? So this one's, I don't think it has too many pictures in it, etc. In fact, yeah, it's got a few. There we go. Heracles and the Stygian birds there. A bunch of Heracles. And these images in this book are lifted from pottery, if you like, and from the ancient Greek world. So, but that's my nice copy, if you like. I wouldn't dare write on that. Just it's if I have a book that I scribble all over, it's well worth to have because I wreck books. Unfortunately, I'm not too kind to them when I work with them. It's not a deliberate thing or anything. It's just the nature of how I work with a book. Is they often get quite scribbled over quite badly and underlined and all sorts of things. And I haven't done too badly on this one, I suppose, but it depends on. That's what my copy of volume 2 of this looks like. In relation to the Baron, by the way, here we go. Just in relation to Laius being the Baron, if we jump a bit ahead, this is more to do with the Atreides and the children of Pelops, the Pelopid line, but this is to do with the kidnapping of Chrysippus. I'll just back up a wee second here to the previous page. Some say that, right, Chrysippus also passed as a son of Pelops and Hippodamia, but was in fact a bastard whom Pelops had begotten on the nymph Astanoche, a Danaid. Now it happened that Laius, when banished from Thebes, was hospitably received by Pelops at Pisa, but fell in love with Chrysippus, to whom he taught the charioteer's art, and as soon as the sentence of banishment was annulled, carried the boy off in his chariot from the Nemean games and brought him to Thebes as his catamite. Some say that Chrysippus killed himself for shame, others that Hippodamia, to prevent Pelops from appointing Chrysippus as successor over the heads of her own sons, came to Thebes, where she tried to persuade Atreus and Thyestes to kill the boy by throwing him down a well. When both refused to murder their father's guest, Hippodamia, at dead of night, stole into Laius's chamber, and finding him asleep, took down his sword from the wall and plunged it into his bedfellow's belly. Laius was at once accused of the murder, but Chrysippus had seen Hippodamia as she fled and accused her with his last breath. Meanwhile, Pelops marched against Thebes to recover Chrysippus, but finding that Laius was already imprisoned by Atreus and Thyestes, nobly pardoned him, recognizing that only an overwhelming love had prompted this breach of hospitality. Some say that Laius, not Thamyris or Minos, was the first pederast, which is why the Thebans, far from condemning the practice, maintain a regiment called the Sacred Band, composed entirely of boys and their lovers. Hippodamia fled to Argyle and there killed herself. but later in accordance with an oracle, her bones were brought back to Olympia, where women enter her walled sanctuary once a year to offer her sacrifices. At one of the turns of the hippodrome stands Hippodamia's bronze statue holding a ribbon with which to decorate Pelops for his victory. There you go. That's the association with them. I suppose the Baron being a paedophile, if you like. There's sponsors down there. And the connection to the Atreides myth, that these myths kind of, I suppose these Greek fun, that they kind of do intermingle a little bit, you know. There we go, folks. So that's us with another chapter of Dune Messiah. We're in for a kind of chunky one next time. And I'd just like to thank you all very much for listening, and hope I didn't do your heads in too much with a little bit of reading from Greek mythology, etc. So I'm off for dental surgery in the morning, and I'll not be happy about that, but it needs done. I've got to get apparently a sixth wisdom tooth out. Well, it's not coming out, but it's coming up against another tooth. So I'm getting sick of all these wisdom teeth. You're meant to get 4, aren't you? Must be overly wise or something like that. So there we go, folks. Thanks very much for joining me, as always, and thank you for all your comments and questions. And look forward to seeing you all next time. And in the meantime, look after yourselves no matter where you are. Be safe, take care, and we'll see you all real soon. And thank you very much for joining me. All the very best to you now. Take care and good night.